Okay, so Dead Among the Depths session 2. We've just had our quick recap before we started the stream. We're going to pick up on the night after the event of the previous session. So it's now the 2nd of January 2012. Now, we've sort of discussed a little bit in brief what you guys have got like going on with regards to a communal haven, a place where you all can sort of meet, where you can all rest if you need to. What does your communal haven look like, and sort of whereabouts is it in Venice? And you should be able to see that on the map. There's the main sort of areas of Venice are written on there. So obviously, if you want to know more about like specific areas, the main areas of Venice being, and again apologies for the pronunciations, Cannaregio, Castello, Dorsodoro. Obviously, the Grand Canal is not really an area, but it is the main thoroughfare for Venice. San Marco, San Polo, and Santa Croce.
Well, it depends how far off the beaten path you want to be. I mean, I know Venice is a major tourist destination, but
Yeah, and
there's going to be parts of it that aren't really on the map.
yeah, it tends to be the areas that are adjoining the Grand Canal, which you can sort of see here, like snaking its way through Venice.
Yeah.
The areas sort of immediately adjoining that tend to be the more sort of touristy places, just because they're more easily accessible. To be honest.
Probably somewhere like Castello then, or Arsenal.
Okay. Okay, so Arsenale was the largest production centre in Venice during like pre-industrial times. It was like a big sort of industrial area. Fleets were built here. It was like a big symbol of like the power of the Venetian Republic. Since the 80s, it's become like an exhibition site. You know, where they show a lot of the old like cannons and armaments and stuff like that. It was getting quite run down and a bit sort of shonky though. And then in 1990, they basically started a big program of enhancement to sort of like bring the area like back up to spec, basically.
I'm just looking as well at the north of Arsenal. I imagine that big bay area
Yeah,
is for cruise ships
pretty much.
or private yachts.
Yeah,
So what's is it Castello?
yeah.
What's that like?
Okay, let me just find my notes. Okay, so Castello used to be the naval sort of powerhouse of Venice, and Arsenal was once a part of it. It used to be a naval dockyard, but now they've sort of drained the area to like reveal more land fairly recently, and now it's like mostly sort of gardens and sort of like slightly larger and more like well off sort of living areas basically. There's still like a fair amount of sort of the boating industry, let's call it, that sort of goes on around there though. There's still this a lot of the buildings here, they have like old memorabilia of like the navy and the old ships that used to ply the waterways around here. So like, you know, anchors and old like figureheads and stuff like that.
The South Islands, they're more affluent, I imagine.
Yeah.
San Michel, is that the graveyard?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so I think the choices then are going to be Castello or Arsenale. Otherwise, you're going to be right in the tourist hotspot. Easy for hunting, but also easier to spot.
Yeah, and I'll point out that most of the events of the previous session took place on the in the Real between San Polo and Rialto. There's like a bridge that goes across the canal between the two of them that's sort of like around about here-ish.
Yeah.
And that was the bridge where the spirit lurked and where the death of Fala Altamora took place.
Okay, so where do you two envision the haven being?
What sort of structure are we interested in? Because I think if we want, you know,
I think they're all
large.
pretty much the same, unless, like, say, you have a yacht or a barge.
Mm.
And you could have a yacht, and you could quite happily store it near Arsenale.
Which, to be honest, if you've got the Delero for it, it's not inconceivable in Venice.
Well, I know a guy.
Yeah,
Is
I'm just wondering if the highly populated Castello looks like really jammed in there. You might be able to hide.
Yeah, I think Castello's mostly stilt houses.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just having a look, actually.
Yeah, it all looks the same from the overhead view, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, Castello is the largest of the six main districts in Venice. Like I say, grew around the naval dockyard, which is sort of where sort of Arsenal is. Largest naval complex in Europe. There's like a ridiculous amount of like churches in the area. And as I say, fairly recently they've sort of drained a lot of land from there, and there's a lot of gardens, and I suppose it's probably got the most sort of open space you're likely to find in Venice, because they have sort of dedicated this amount of space to like gardens, so it does attract a fair amount of tourists.
I've put a various link for Castello housing in the chat. And what's the other option? Arsenale.
I think like Castello might be nice because it's not like the spot for tourism, but it has a bunch of nice amenities, and it does have like gardens, which is that's not really something you have a lot in the city.
That's true.
So it would be unique as far as that goes. Open space.
Yeah, my only concern with the boat thing was, you know, if you needed to get out during the day for whatever reason, you'd have no chance, would you? I assume to, you know, keep in the shadows or go between buildings, or if you can get out of sunlight, sort of thing. I thought it'd be a bit more dangerous,
Yeah, I suppose that would be a
trapped, sort of, if you know what I mean.
We've also
be
to the right of sort of Castello and Arsenale, we've got Livigno here, which is two islands effectively joined together. There's like very little in terms of population on these two islands. Those that are there tend to work in like agriculture because there's more open land here. However, the eastern part of the island, which is sort of just off the map, is a military zone. The like Venetian like military used to like drill practice and stuff like that.
Right, I've just looked at Arsenale on a Google map. It's very tightly packed.
Yep.
Very tightly packed. So if you want more open space, you're probably looking at Castello.
Yeah, I
Like,
suppose that's the sort of options here. Do we want like open areas, space to be outside of structures, or do we want like densely packed industrial zone, or like formerly heavily industrialized zone?
I'm just looking at yachts. So,
Maybe more foot traffic in Castello. Just 'cause
Yeah,
the size of the
absolutely.
place and a bit more
Absolutely.
central, isn't it?
Yep.
Whereas the other places, a little bit off to one side, out of
Yep.
the way a little bit.
Yeah, which comes with security, of course, because if there's not
Yeah.
people there, and
Yeah,
if you're hanging out in a warehouse, that's people aren't gonna come looking for you.
Yeah, so you got advantages and disadvantages in both, haven't you, basically?
Yeah.
the average price for a 100-foot yacht is 20 million.
Yeah, they ain't cheap.
And then 70-foot is 4 million. 64-foot is 1.3 million.
I think what Dave's trying to say is like your guy that you know are really probably best to have like some like hefty pockets on him.
Yeah.
50-foot yacht is 750,000.
Yeah, I thought my resources were quite high, but I'm not convinced they stretch to that.
And then 40-foot yacht is nearly 500,000.
We got to make some florins, guys. We need to get a yacht. I think I would possibly vote for Castello. Just because it
I'm
gives
fine
us
with
more
Castello.
people.
Yeah, I quite like the idea of a townhouse, sort of, 3 or 4 floors, maybe a basement.
Well, if
Well,
you
they
look
don't
at the
have
picture I
basements, do
put
they?
in the chat, it is
Do they have
a
basements?
townhouse, yeah.
Can they have basements?
Well, they do, but they flood easily.
Yeah,
Yeah, very easily.
yeah.
Like, it's not
Almost
even a
underwater,
question of
isn't it?
trying to hold the water back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, one of them tall 3 or 4 floor places, maybe.
Okay, so I've just put a note on the map in sort of Castello. If you guys click on the icon on the left hand side that looks like a little bookmark, it's like right near the bottom. If you hover over it, it will say journal notes. You should see like a magnifying glass pop up, and if you click on that, you should be able to see the notes, I think.
Apart from
I can't see.
the Resinia Spada.
Yeah, the inspector is the only one that I can see currently.
Okay, right, let me just configure the permissions for that.
There we go.
There we are.
Right, cool. Yeah, it's just the permissions.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I just double-clicked on it and it gave me
Yeah, I'll give you a very basic note that just says like communal haven for PCs at the minute.
That's it, yeah.
But obviously I'll fill in the details of that, and now you guys I've made you basically owners of that note, so if any of you guys, an idea I stole shamelessly off Johannes, if any of you guys want to add anything to that, you should be able to go in and edit it. And like I said, I've sort of set it about there, just because that's still in the Castello, but it's a little bit nearer to the Rialto, which is where the events of the previous session occurred.
I think that's probably ideal, John, to be honest, where it is.
Lovely. Okay, so in your townhouse, let's call it for want of a better term, how do you guys rest for the evening? I'm assuming for convenience you've all been resting at your coterie's haven. Where do you rest? Do you sleep in beds? Do you sleep in like the cellar in a coffin? How do you rest during the day?
I'd probably sleep in a bed,
Yeah.
surrounded, well, 4-poster bed surrounded by black light curtain.
Oh yeah, they are like big thick drapes.
Yeah, and have the same over the doorway, but have the illusion set so it looks like it's just a thin cloth blowing in the wind, like you usually see.
Yep. Okay, no problems. So we've got our newest we've been introduced to, coterie mate Sonia, who sleeps in this big 4-poster bed with like heavy like black light curtains on all 4 sides of the bed. How about Aurelio and Franco? How do they sleep away the sunlight hours?
I like to think that Franco would have a coffin. He's quite traditional in that way. Maybe not a traditional looking coffin, but it'd definitely be, you know, a classic box with a lid type thing. But he would be looking to use like an attic space, so there's just no windows, just dark and secluded and out of the way, basically.
Absolutely fine, not a problem.
Rather than the basement sort of option, because of
because of the
location.
Water.
Yeah.
And obviously, you will all know as Venetian natives that they have a phenomenon that they simply call, when translated, high water, and it's just times of the year when, due to the weather or the rainfall, the sort of the average water level of Venice rises quite high, and most buildings at that point, the basements get flooded. It's just a fact of life. It happens. And in fact, anytime you go around Venice, most of the buildings you'll see there's like a sort of like water discoloration for like a couple of feet at the bottom of every building from these times when the water level rises.
Yeah.
So I think that just leaves Aurelio then.
Yeah, and I think this is probably one of the few times that Aurelio does sleep in this structure, because he has his own elsewhere, and I think just by virtue of that, there's not like a permanent arrangement necessarily, aside from the one that he does use, which I think I was imagining this to be like a I guess it would have to be some kind of watertight sort of closet slash like cabin, like cabinet structure thing. Well, I say that, but basically what I mean is like wardrobe for like the electrics of the building, which like he's just going into the, you know, electric closet.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like sleeps just upright.
Yeah, so basically you guys have
It's
got like a large sort of fuse cupboard, for want of a better term,
Yeah.
in here, and you just sort of like sit yourself back in
Yeah.
it, like,
It's like
nestle yourself in,
dry
shut
clothes.
the doors.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, 'cause
and obviously it would be
he does-
watertight because of the electrics.
Yeah. And he usually sleeps in his own place outside, but yeah, when he does sleep here, that's probably where he goes.
Okay, that is absolutely grand. Thank you very much, guys. So we begin, as I've said, on the 2nd of January 2012. It's a Monday evening for anyone who is interested. Darkness has fallen across Venice. The sounds of, since obviously you're quite near the Grand Canal, the sounds of tourists, boats full of tourists, you know, like gondoliers doing the old solo mio, which they only ever do for tourists. It's not a thing. They just do it because tourists like it and they get a better tip. But you can hear sort of that echoing from a few places, and there's the ever-present sort of gentle lapping of the waters, which is pretty much the permanent soundtrack to nights in Venice, to the point where, to your guys' enhanced vampiric senses, even though of you who don't have like auspex or anything like that, if you listen, you can seemingly always hear it below the raucous noise of the tourists, which unfortunately in modern nights is also becoming an ever-present soundtrack to life in Venice, and much as it's convenient for you guys, you know, more people equals more opportunity for feeding, to put it bluntly, and it also brings a lot of money into Venice. It's also causing problems for the city, whether that be waste, vandalism, the fact that a lot of tourist industries are basically replacing sort of actual like steady jobs, like a lot of people moving into the tourist industry, and the city's becoming almost entirely reliant on the tourist trade. So when they have horribly inclement weather, which does happen from time to time, and the tourist trade sort of slackens off, the money just disappears out of Venice. They don't really have a great deal to fall back on, which for a proud city like Venice that was once its own republic many hundreds of years ago, it's a sad state of affairs for it to have fallen into the state it's now in. Very appropriate to this sort of darker world setting that we are in. So obviously in our version of Venice, this is all exaggerated a little more. The tourists are a little more rowdy. They cause a few more problems. There's more tension between the locals and the tourists and the citizens of Venice who embrace tourism and are trying to move into sort of like the modern age, and those who yearn to see the city become something like it once was, this great power. And this is also true of the city's kindred. Those of you who are of the clan Hakata, or clan Giovanni as it used to be known, will know that up until recent nights, this whole city was pretty much the stronghold of clan Giovanni, the necromancers of Italy. You didn't enter Venice without the permission of clan Giovanni, and even if you had that permission, you knew from the moment you stepped into Venice, if you were not of that clan, and to be honest probably if you were going to be watched 24/7. And if the rumours were to be believed about the powers of clan Giovanni as they were known back then, they were reputed to be necromancers and have these strange ability to call on spirits and reach beyond the Sudario, the barrier between the realms of the living and the dead. So even if you couldn't see any spies watching you who knew what sort of strange and foul spirits were lurking by invisibly, ferrying information back to their Giovanni masters. But in recent nights there seems to have been something of a shake-up in clan Giovanni, and they've reinvented themselves as the Hakata, welcoming in cousins and bloodlines and subclans of theirs. Where once there was a great deal of conflict between them, there now appears to be something resembling an uneasy peace. If you imagine a family that's long had a great feud going on, and then somehow they've not managed to get rid of all the slights and all the problems, but they've managed to paper over the cracks enough that they can at least get on with each other in the face of, who knows, perhaps far greater threats. But this sort of melding together of the various clans of death to create their Carta wasn't without its problems, because it resulted in many deaths amongst all of these subclans, some of which were sacrifices to enable the clan to move forward. So Elder Giovanni, who had hunted down their cousins and people they considered like not to be true Giovanni, some of them were offered up as a sort of peace offering, as a sacrifice to mollify these cousins, these distant vampiric relatives. But it has meant that the clan as a whole, although it's now united as much as it can be, there are far fewer of them, and with that reduction in numbers they have lost the ability to as thoroughly police their domain as they once did. And this has led to, luckily, other kindred bodies such as the Camarilla have their own problems to deal with at the moment, but it has led to non-Giovanni kindred. I mean, we have one here, our very own Nosferatu, played by Darren Franco Lombardo. We also obviously have Hugo Barcelone. Unfortunately, we don't have Rob with us this evening, but a member of the Gangrel clan, and other kindred beside who are not of the Hecata have now come into Venice. Although the city is very much ruled by the Hecata still, but for the moment at least, they seem to be adopting a sort of hands-off policy where basically as long as kindred don't interfere with the tourist trade or do anything to bring undue heat to the kindred population of Venice, they seem to be largely content to deal with their own business and leave other kindred to go about theirs. And you guys know this for a fact, that there are these non-Giovanni, non-Hecata I should say, kindred in the city, because within your sort of area of the Castello there are at least 2 coteries of kindred who do not belong to the Hecata. You know that one of these coteries call themselves the Artisti del Destino, and they appear for all intents and purposes to be a Camarilla coterie. You've probably glimpsed them maybe at a particularly architecturally renowned church, of which there are many in Venice, or perhaps one of the many artistic galleries that dot the landscape throughout Venice. You haven't really spent a lot of time with them or getting to know them, but like I say, you will have glimpsed them mainly at places of artistic interest or of a great sort of historical interest in Venice. You would know that there is a beautiful woman who appears to be their leader. There is a smartly dressed gentleman who, as you put a bit of feelers out, you've managed to find out from some of your contacts, perhaps your guy, Johannes, that this smartly dressed person is a dealer of antiquities. They also appear to have, as seems to be de rigueur amongst the various coteries of Venice, they appear to have an ex-priest amongst their number, dog collar and all. He seems quite serious whenever he's been glimpsed, but like I say, you've not really got to know them. And then finally there is a gentleman who appears to be sort of clad in the manner of a modern doctor, who appears to accompany them at all times, but he doesn't really seem to say much. And like I said, they seem to be fairly reserved and keep themselves to themselves, but they seem drawn to these sort of artistic or historical areas of interest. However, there is also an extremely noisy, for want of a better term, coterie of, you think maybe English, maybe American, sort of kindred. You're not entirely sure. There only seems to be like 3 of them, but they literally seem to be the epitome of your sort of anarch, like, you know, good time coterie, you know, undead and loving it. We're here in Venice because it's a non-stop party town, and in fact they've even called
lads.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And they've even called themselves, their coterie, the Tourists. And they appear, you're guessing based on their behaviour, they're a fairly young coterie of kindred. The way they're behaving would tend to suggest that they're members of the anarch movement, or they're independent. They're certainly not as like reserved and as sort of, I'm not saying they let break the masquerade here and there and like alert mortals to the existence of vampires, because they don't, because they're not entirely stupid. But whereas there's a certain level of decorum and carefulness about the artists of destiny, that seems to be wholly lacking from the tourists. They just seem to be here to enjoy themselves, as the mortal tourists are doing, and enjoy their own life. There appeared to be a couple of gentlemen, one of whom looks like a dirty hobo, the other, which is a thin, lanky guy who like dresses in an unremarkable manner, in like tracksuit bottoms, probably like a big like Hawaiian t-shirt and like a Hawaiian shirt with a t-shirt underneath. And then there's a young woman who seems pretty charming. You know, you probably spoke to her in passing, and she wears like cut off like denim shorts, standard like tourist clothing. They appear to have like done their bit to try and blend in with the actual mortal tourists of the city. But like I say, you've not really had a chance to get to know either of these coteries in any great respect so far, but you've actually seen them about. And as you all rise for the evening, I'm going to ask you, can you all please make me a rouse check? And there's a button for that on your character sheet. And this is just to see whether your hunger grows when you wake for the evening. Oh. Okay. So, Franco and Aurelio, your hunger increases by 1.
So,
Okay, didn't it?
does it automatically tick it?
Yeah. Well, mine went up because I was watching the sheet.
Yeah, because I swore it was on 1, and when I looked away, it was on 2. I was like, wait, is John that fast?
Mine's on 4, so I assume that's bad.
Oh, yes, it's very bad. So,
Somebody's hungry.
as you wake up in the evening, as I described to the others, Aurelio, I assume you're on about 2 or 3, is that correct? Is that correct, Aurelio? What's your hunger at the moment?
2.
Okay.
Dos.
And are you on 1 or 2, Sonia?
1.
Okay. So, Aurelio, you wake up and you're like, I'm starting to feel a little bit thirsty. Sonia, you're absolutely fine. And as I described for you guys, you wake up to the sound of the water lapping and the distant din of the tourists. You also hear this when you wake up, Franco. However, when you wake up, like deep down in your soul and sort of thudding in your ears, you can hear like as your enhanced vampiric senses seem to pick out the heartbeats of the few people who are sort of wandering on the walkway by the side of your building. Although you don't drink as in a normal human would drink, when you wake up, your throat feels like quite dry and parched, as though you've not had a drink in many evenings. And as you all wake, Aurelio and Sonia, you will notice when you look at Franco that he appears to be look a little more undead than usual. I know that sounds ridiculous, but he looks a bit more. He's pretty hideous anyway. He's a Nosferatu. He's pretty rank looking. He's got his big collar turned up and his like hair sort of hanging down, trying to hide like his face. But when you catch a glimpse of him, you can see he looks a little bit more drawn and pallid than he does normally. And he started to get that sort of, there's red rings of almost like tiredness around his eyes. And just the air of a predator seems to hang heavy about him. And obviously, as kindred yourself, you know very well what that means. It means he needs to probably get himself some blood and go and feed.
I probably comment on this as we sort of pick ourselves up. Franco, are you feeling quite all right? I say as I fetch my Tupperware container and slide a finger under the lid and pop it open to release the aroma of rancid blood that I will then proceed to consume.
Yeah, I think I'll turn my nose up at that. So, that smells foul. I think I should be taking an evening stroll. Find something a little bit more fresh.
Take care.
He's a sandman. He's
Indeed. So that means normally you would
styles.
feed from someone who's sleeping. Effectively, you steal blood from people who are resting. So
But that doesn't necessarily mean you're killing them, does it?
no, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the only way.
Ideally
you hunt.
not.
That's just basically your like standard method of hunting.
Yeah, like left to your own devices, like you just like I better go get some food. That's what you do.
But how discreet can you do it? I mean,
Okay, well, luckily for you, when a kindred, normally unless there's something particularly that prevents it, even a hideous member of Clan Nosferatu like yourself, when a vampire feeds, they're as part of almost like the predator's like natural, if you could call it natural, defenses. When you sink your fangs into a person, it creates this sense of euphoria in a victim that's conscious, in order to, and it's purely a thing to prevent them from like struggling as you're stealing their blood. Now, some clans it doesn't work for, most clans it does. Now, for yourself, if it's a sleeping victim, obviously they don't sort of wake up and start having this euphoric experience. The way I'm choosing to read it is that if you feed off a sleeping victim, effectively this sort of euphoric effect causes them to enter this like really pleasant sort of deep dream state where they're having like really nice dreams, so like they don't wake up and they don't notice that their lifeblood's being sapped out of them by an evil undead predator of the night.
yeah. So I will be thinking about, what I need to do. So I'll be looking for probably tourists, hotels, people in a sort of fairly lubricated, drunken state as easy sort of prey, just to top up.
Okay, that's
Just blood
absolutely
levels,
fine.
basically.
So to see how successful you are in this, I'm going to ask you to make me a dexterity plus stealth roll as you creep
now-
about looking for blood.
And the highlight here is that as you are now hungry, this is more dangerous to do,
Yeah.
because you will have 4 hunger dice, which can create problems going forward. But
Yeah, given your dice pool's only 5, that means all but one of your dice are hunger dice, effectively.
Yeah,
that's the game.
I'm just checking because he also likes to use like silence of death, which is his like stealth. When
Okay,
Yeah.
there's what
Looking
level of power is that?
nah,
Because obviously, if it's higher than level 1, it may require a rouse check.
it's only level 1.
Okay.
But it just might help a little bit. Right, so it was dexterity. What was it? Sorry.
Dex stealth.
Did you click on the dex or the stealth? Oh no, yeah.
You click on the stealth.
Yeah.
Okay. Success is 1. Yep, so you have managed to locate someone. So I'm just going to quickly use this handy dandy random chart of people that they give you. Okay, not a problem. So you, as you're creeping through the city silently, the noise of your passage masked by your Nosferatu talents, you spot in the distance a building that you know to be, let's be charitable and call it something of a house of ill repute. And as you spot this place, you draw closer. You're thinking, well, maybe you can slip inside, avail yourself of the blood on offer inside. Perhaps your hunger getting the better of your better judgment. And you're just about to try and creep inside when you notice in an alleyway just to the side of the building there is a a large gentleman. He basically looks as though he's passed out in an alleyway. His trousers are round his ankles. His like boxer shorts are sort of like half pulled up, as though he sort of like stumbled out of somewhere, like trying to get dressed quickly. His like buttons are done up a bit funny, as though he was trying to get dressed as he stumbled out, probably blind drunk. And in fact, as you get a bit nearer, you can smell the faint sort of waft of liquor on the air. And he's obviously sort of stumbled into this alleyway, planning on like finishing dressing himself, and he appears to have passed out. You can see from the sort of slightly laboured rise and fall of his chest, 'cause he's lying on his front, that he is still breathing.
Can I see the door that he's come out of? Is it like?
Yeah, it's the
back door to
it's
this
it's
place?
not the back door. It's the front door that you were heading towards.
Oh.
He must have basically staggered out of there and been like, "Oh, I need to like get myself dressed," and he's ducked into this alleyway to like carry on getting dressed. Obviously, the drink's got the better of him, and he's just like collapsed over, and he now lies where you find him.
It is a fairly secluded alleyway, and
Yeah,
fairly so yeah.
he'd gone fairly far down the alleyway because he like obviously didn't want anyone like coming across him while he was trying to dress himself.
Yep. So I shall definitely approach using my silence still, and then once I get close to him, have a good look around. You know, for anyone noticing me.
Okay, no problem. Make me a wits awareness roll. I wouldn't normally bother with making a roll to if you spot anyone, but given that you're so hungry, you're probably just focusing on what's going on. It's a messy critical, and I'm going to look this up in the book just because it's the first time we've done this, and I don't want to do you a disservice by doing this wrong. Basically,
No, this is a beautiful place to get all these deets down, because this is something that we probably will run into a bunch.
Yep.
And while John is looking that up, I'm going to
got it.
blather on. Oh, wonderful.
Okay, so just to let you guys know, when your hunger level goes up, a number of dice in your pool for any roll are replaced with hunger dice. If you succeed on a roll, but most of your successes are on your hunger dice, it's what's known as a messy critical. You still succeed, but in some way, like, your beast manifests to cause you potential complications further down the road. I'll go into it in more detail in a second. If you get a failed roll, but one or more of your hunger dice come up as a 1, that's what's known as a bestial failure. And in that you failed the roll, but again, your beast has caused some complications. So the book describes a messy critical as a critical win in which 1 or more 10s appear on a hunger dice. That's a messy critical. The character succeeds as an irregular critical, but like an animal would, not a being capable of foresight or self-control. So in this situation, I think it's probably fairly obvious that Franco's hunger has got the better of him. He's seen this guy, he's like, the blood's there, and as he's getting closer, his beast bubbled to the surface. He's thrown caution to the wind. He's like, right, I just want this blood. I'm all about this blood. And there'll be a bit of discussion here because the storyteller and the player work together to decide on the level of success and the level of mess. By and large, they scale upwards together, so most success, mo mess. The following are results from what it describes as a good meaty mess. Take that as you will. The character gains 1 or more stains from their monstrous actions, and these can lead to like your humanity sort of ebbing away in the long run. You breach the masquerade, like someone's seen you with like your fangs out like over this guy. You could lose a dot from an advantage, like, I don't know, if you were driving, maybe you've totaled your car as you leapt out to get at the guy's blood or whatever. If none of the other conditions fit the narrative, such as on a stealth or awareness test, which this is, the messy critical turns into a simple mess and the test fails as the beast clouds the senses. So if we wanted to, we could just go, as a result of this, it's failed for whatever reason. You've not been able to get the blood. Personally, I think that's not one of the most interesting ways of handling it. But as I say, it is a discussion between myself and yourself, Darren, and obviously, guys, Johannes, Dave, feel free to chip in, because what we're looking to do now is you've succeeded, unless we decide we're just going to go with a straight fail. But otherwise, you've succeeded, you'll get the blood, that's in the bank, you can take that home with you. But we just now have to decide on what's happened that's going to cause complications. And it's not supposed to be a case of like, oh, this has just like ended your character. It's supposed to be like, oh, additional complications have occurred that's going to like drive plot or create interest sort of further down the line. So what do we think, guys? I think it's obvious that Franco's like hungers overcame his natural his better judgment, as we sort of said. What do we think in terms of this messy critical? What could have occurred?
And you say the more hunger dice, so the more successes on that, the worse it is, sort of, potentially.
Well, it basically it doesn't necessarily have to be, but the scale of the complication should be equal to the scale of the success. So if we're doing this in like, if the easiest one is if we're doing this in a combat, if you were in a combat and you got a messy critical, but you'd only done like a little bit of damage to your enemy, it'd only be a little complication. Whereas if you've just like leveled your enemy and like taken him down in like a oneer, because you've got like a really massive success, the complications caused would be like equally as grand.
So I'm sort of seeing it as one normal success, 3 sort of bad success, so +2 or -2, whichever way. So I think the two obvious things for me would be obviously someone seeing you would be an obvious one, or hunger's got too much of him. This geezer's not the healthiest guy, and he's actually ended up killing him instead of just like drinking a bit of blood and just leaving him be and, you know, walking off. He's not of the best health, and it's actually sort of put him over the edge somehow, or the way he's done it, he's hit a vein or something that's, you know, he's bled out basically, or enough to cause him to.
I think we could potentially go with either of those. I don't know if, like I say, Dave or Johannes, you have any thoughts? I mean, obviously, like myself and you have the sort of like final say here, Darren. But you know, it's always good to get some ideas.
You know, maybe the victim wakes up and manages to get a blurry photo of this alleged vampire, because then that can link back to your spooky police officer. So it gives you potential further down the line. You've not technically destroyed the masquerade and wanted for breaching it, basically.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I suppose we could say that Franco's like fed on this guy. He's like recovered a bit more quickly than expected as Franco's sort of like exiting stage left. He's recovered a bit, and either he's got like his mobile out, or he's a tourist, so maybe he had a camera on him, and he's just quickly, like, set up very hazily, like, snapped a sort of Dutch angle, like, blurry photo of like this strange figure running away. And he's sort of like, oh, I don't know what happened. I woke up in this alleyway. I felt like a bit woozy, and this fellow was bent over me, and he ran off. I managed to get this picture, and it wouldn't be like a mug shot of you. It'd be like really blurry, sort of like guy with a big collar up and like greasy hair, like disappearing off. So yeah, we could do something like that.
Yeah, if we go with this, that's a wonderful start for this guy to be a an individual who is going to engage in like haunted supernatural, Venice. Because he's got the photo in his camera of this like straight off the Chronicles of Darkness core rulebook, sort of dark alleyway, shady figure, maybe sort of like half profile with like one glinting eyeball looking at the camera, and you can interpret the shadows in the alleyway in any monstrous format you want.
Yeah, and I can see we've got Rob Bemper in the chat who is just like, "Oh, messy critical, he's getting slid into the bin."
yeah. Shout out to Rob. Your mustache is also cool, Rob. He was
Indeed.
talking to me about that before.
Indeed it is. Okay, so in terms of how much blood you get, Franco, from this guy, if you want to just take a little sip from him, that will take 3 turns, and it will slake 1 point of your hunger, so it will reduce it by 1, and that includes like licking the wound afterwards to like close it over. If you want slightly more, you could slake 2 dots of your hunger, and that is the maximum you can drink from a human without causing them harm, but that would take you an entire scene because you're there for longer drinking the blood. Now, if you're not bothered about this guy or causing him harm, you can slake either 3 to 4 hunger. It takes 1 turn per hunger slaked, and they take a number of aggravated damage equal to like how much blood you've taken from them, because you're literally like, oh, I'm draining pretty much all of your blood. Or if you like really do not give like a single shining shit about this guy, you can literally be like, right, I'm taking all of his blood, and that will reduce your hunger by 5, and that will take 5 turns. And this is literally the only way in the game you can get to hunger 0, because normally you always have hunger 1, but for like a short time, if you completely drain someone afterwards, you're like, oh, my hunger's gone completely, until it hasn't, because obviously vampirism is a curse, as we all know, and that does result in the death of a person, which could potentially have consequences for your humanity, depending on how humane your character is.
Yeah, well, I'd definitely like to think he'd be able to keep himself in a better mindset than that. He would go for option 2 of trying to take as much as he could before taking it too far. So sort of two hunger.
Yep. So you can reduce your hunger by 1.
Which would also fit in with the fact that he's potentially sort of waking up near the end of it, just as I'm sort of leaving the scene. And
indeed. So sorry, it'll be you reduce your hunger by 2.
okay.
It takes you a scene, and I'm going to say that sort of since it was a result of a messy critical, as we've said, you do get away. I'm going to say you don't necessarily realise that this guy's taken a photo of you. You've drained a load of blood out of him. He's woozy, he's uncoordinated, and to be fair, you're feeling a bit lightheaded because this guy was like incredibly drunk, so there's like alcohol in his blood. But you know, needs must. You've pounced on him. You've drained some of his blood. He barely he lets out a slight groan as your fangs pierce his flesh, and you drain blood out of him, feeling the hunger start to recede slightly, and then you leave him where you find him. You obviously lick the wound, so the wound closes up, and you start heading out of the alleyway. Now we know, as the audience, that this guy, perhaps as a result of having like quite a strong constitution, I mean, obviously he likes his drink. Maybe he's sort of like got accustomed to sort of like recovering quickly. He actually sort of wakes up. He's delirious if he was drained, shaky. He's in a cold sweat. He's lying on the cold, damp stone of this like Venice back alley, but he manages to recover a little bit quicker than a normal person would do. Like I say, perhaps he's got quite a strong constitution, and as a tourist, he fumbles around in his pockets as he sees this sort of like this figure that he can't quite sort of describe, this sort of hazy, sort of silent figure that he just sort of like opens his eye a crack as you're looming over him, and then you disappear off. He fumbles around in his jacket, pulls out like one of those cheap disposable cameras, like the Polaroid sort of style ones. He literally just points it vaguely in your direction. There is a he doesn't even really remember to put the flash on. But unfortunately for you, because it's a complication, there are like windows of like the building nearby with like light coming from them enough to partially illuminate his photo. So it's murky, it's dark, but it's not just like a black square. And he snaps off a picture of you as you disappear into the night. And it's only once you've gone a good distance towards returning to your communal haven and you've started to calm down, the hunger's receding, you're starting to come back to yourself a bit more, that in the back of your mind you vaguely remember like hearing this like whirring and like a mechanical click as you burst out of the alley and left the scene rather rapidly.
Thus the legend of Jack the Licker was born.
That's it. And you return to the communal haven. Okay, so whilst Franco has been out feeding, obviously Sonia, Aurelio, you've had a bit of time to do some stuff for yourself, because obviously Franco did like a fair amount of scouting around to find this guy, took a bit of time feeding, and he's going to make his way back. So what would you have been up to at the very start of your evening?
I would have most likely been practicing my combat, so given the fact we're in a public space, we'll make it look like athletics instead.
Okay, not a problem. You start, like doing your stretching exercises and like practicing your form. You never know when it's going to be needed. After all, how about yourself, Aurelia?
Sorry, I neglected to put up the name of this architectural prodigy from way back, John. Do you have it to hand, by chance? The one that we learned of from our ghost friend.
Oh yes, I've got that. The architect.
Palladino?
It is. It's Andrea Palladio.
2 L's?
I will post it in the chat for you on our Zoom. Just give me a second. There we go.
Well, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, no problems.
Okay.
I'm fully expecting there'll be a lot of copying and pasting names in this game.
Yeah, same. Right. So, what are you doing? Like katas or like what? What's Sonia's routine?
So Sonia's routine at the moment is she's practicing fighting, but she's making it look more like she's practicing athletics because she's quite live.
Mm-hmm.
So any tourist passing by are just going to see this local woman doing backflips and somersaults in the front room.
Yeah. So I'll be sat in the corner, sipping on my.
We are trying to make it look like we are normal people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll be sipping my.
Not a mobster and a death wizard.
Yeah. Well, my rancid blood cocktail I'm sipping from my Tupperware cup is going to be, if someone asks, it's tomato soup.
Vodka Jello.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. I suppose Campari on I don't know, gelatin.
Yeah, leave the 2 weirdest ones at home. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll go well.
To be fair, none of you are exactly unweird.
Yeah,
which
but
isn't surprising.
4, I think we're probably the least likely to go towards humanity.
Yeah, we're in danger. Let's leave it at that. So I'll be sat there, just like slurping on my my breakfast. Because I was fortunate enough to indeed drain some rancid blood from the corpse that we found in the apartment yesterday, and I stashed that away because I wasn't hungry at the time, but I knew that I would be. So I meal prep, and I'm watching you do the thing. It's like, does the name Andrea Palladio ring any bells for you?
No.
Hmm. I think I will have to take a moment tonight and retire to the library. There are things that I need to look up. Just to follow a strand of thought that I think may be of some relevance now.
What was the name again? Andrea.
Andrea Palladio.
Does that ring any bells, John, being local?
Yeah, as I've said earlier, it's the architect I described earlier.
Yeah.
The one who was sort of instrumental in like rebuilding Venice after the Great Plague, built a lot of the fancier churches in Venice, was well renowned for also building like villas and such like across the whole of Italy. Like say, is almost sort of viewed as kind of like a saint, although not actually a saint, but in that sort of style of like admiration in Venice, because he was like one of the most influential people at helping it rebuild after so many people died in the plague. So you would know that because everyone in Venice knows that he was like a really famous architect and built some of the city's most like wondrous buildings.
So I will respond then. Wasn't he the architect?
Yes, and there is, of course, nothing special about that. But
I don't know. He built an entire city on water. I think that's quite special.
well, I suppose we do have some things to be thankful of that Palladino did. But one of the things that rather we, with Hugo, found last night was there are not one but two indicators of Palladio maybe having been influenced by, and I haven't mentioned this to Hugo or Franco, and I would expect that you perhaps deem it also necessary to exercise discretion for the moment, but I believe that Palladio was influenced by, well, La Familia, as it were back then. That would have been Augustus's lot. Now, again, not particularly special. Many people were, no doubt. But I think there are a couple of I wish to the friend that I saw on the bridge last night was it, the way that he spoke of Palladio combined with the sketches we saw in the priests, which I have actually, and I reach into my my. I suppose I might have some kind of like leather briefcase thing, like a small one.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
So like a for documents and stuff. So I'll get it and I'll show Andrea. Andrea. So, oh, he's here now. Sonia, some of the sketches I took from the priest's place because we cleaned all that stuff up.
Yeah. So Aurelio shows you a series of slightly crumpled sketches, some of which, as we described when we're going through our sort of catch up on the first session, seem to show this like crude drawing of a human figure, arms outstretched with some sort of light or energy emanating from it. that looks if you squint, it vaguely looks like, it's almost like radiating out. It's like you might, if the lights were turned down a bit and you were squinting, maybe it might look a bit like angel wings. And then also there's a number of sketches of sort of like mazes or like labyrinths, like from the top down, like I said, almost like mazes you find in a puzzle book that have been sort of roughly sketched out.
So
If
we
I
have.
remember correctly, the original blueprints for Venice are in the Vatican.
Well, that'll be a.
So we're not going to get hold of those anytime soon.
In a previous life, I've been there. Not that it's much use now, but
So we need to find some copies of the architecture.
to
So rather than the library, maybe you should concentrate on the Hall of Records.
it's a good call. I had intended to flesh out the picture of Palladino, but I suppose we might start with the architecture.
Well, I'm
instead.
thinking if he's drawn patterns of a maze, I doubt he's done it to cure boredom.
No, this is. They would have told you some of this. I'm not sure in what exact words, but there is in the true form of the world that we know beyond the shroud. There is a place that some do call the labyrinth, which, given that Palladio is involved, we have a priest who is potentially possessed, maybe hallucinating angels, drawing pictures of a maze, of all things, a maze. This might be something that is now surfacing in the aftermath of all that we have done. And I haven't mentioned it to our compatriots yet, for I wish to
Surely
have
at
more
the moment,
information before that.
at the moment, as it stands, it's family business.
Exactly.
We don't need to go confusing them with images of far-off mazes in a land they've never even heard of.
And speaking of your compatriots, it's at this point in time, as Franco's making his way back just down the street, just outside your communal haven, and as you're just about to push open the door and go in, Franco, you happen to glance to your right. Maybe you're feeling a little bit exposed, maybe a little bit paranoid as you're thinking about this strange sort of mechanical clicking you heard as you sort of regretfully lost a little bit of yourself as you fed on this person. As you look to your right, you see that on the wall of a nearby building to your communal haven, there is a slightly pudgy looking man wearing a sort of winter coat. He's holding almost like a wallpaper scrape, like you might use to scrape old wallpaper off before applying fresh paper. He's holding one of them, and he appears, you can't see exactly what he's doing, but he appears to be like hunched over, and he's going like that against the wall of this building. You can hear like the of this wallpaper scraper against the plaster and stone of this wall.
Yeah, I mean, I'll turn to see and try and work out what he's doing. Is he trying to carve something into the wall, or does it look more like he's trying to remove something from the wall?
It's difficult to tell at the distance you're at. However, given the implement he's using, you expect that, like, if he was going to carve something into the wall, like just that a standard like bread knife or a kitchen knife would be better for it. So you expect maybe he's trying to remove something from the wall, or.
And it's like, did you say it's the wall almost opposite where we are
Yeah.
staying?
As far as you're aware, it's a perfectly normal sort of building, like sort of domestic building.
Can I try and, well, actually, the sense of the beast, that's like a passive skill, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where I detect sort of other vampires and creatures. How close do you have to be for that? Not sure. Yeah.
I would say it's basically like someone you could reasonably see and communicate with, which you would be able to at this distance. I mean, like, you just cross the street from him.
Okay.
So I would say, like, yeah, that is obviously it's a reflexive thing. You know, it's passive. You don't have to trigger that. But I would say as you're focusing in on this person, you're not getting any sense of great hostility from him. Although since you spent a bit of time looking, I'm going to say that you can make me a wits insight roll, or you can use investigation if you prefer.
Wits insight.
Okay, critical success. So what I'm going to say is, if you've just been looking normally and you've got a normal success, you would have noticed, and you do notice this, that this fella, there appears to be like a bit of like nervous excitement about this fella. You know, like as he's holding his other hand against the wall, it's like trembling a little bit, but not in fear. You know, you can't smell like the fear sweat breaking out on him. He seems to be like almost excited and a little bit nervous, like the way he keeps like glancing around, although he's not spotted you. And you, because of your critical success, you managed to get near enough when you notice that he appears to be scraping like some sort of small rectangular like sticker off the wall of this building, and he's got it half peeled up. It's sort of curled over, and you can see he's frantically but carefully trying to like scrape the rest of it off, obviously trying not to damage it. Like, he keeps like scraping it and then like gently pulling the sticker up a little, scrape a little bit, pull it up a little bit. He's obviously worried about damaging it because he's taking far longer. You could just like and rip it off if you weren't concerned about that.
Yeah. Well, I want to approach him to potentially see if it scares him off, so I can see what he's trying to remove before he removes it.
Okay, so how do you approach him? Are you literally just like sashaying up to him bold as brass, or are you sneaking up to him?
No, I want him to know that I'm there, because I'm hoping that he might just like run off before he sort of even gets to look at me too closely, because obviously my appearance. But I will try and hide my appearance with my usual tricks.
Okay, so you're using your Mask of 1,000 Faces. Okay, so that lasts for a scene. No test is required, although you do need to make a rouse check as you will the blood to work your will. Okay, so your hunger level has gone up by 1. So
Okay.
you will the blood to do what you wish it to do, and you don't disappear, but as you say, you appear nondescript, but just like a random guy in the street that you might expect to see walking the streets of Venice. As long as you don't do anything to arouse suspicion, they'll just be like, oh yeah, there's some dude just walking down the street, it's fine. But as you call on your blood to do this, you do again start feeling that like nagging sense of hunger just starting to like impinge on the corner of your awareness again. But yeah, you make your way across. The guy's still like glancing around. In fact, his eyes sort of look dead at you a couple of times as he's like But thanks to the supernatural abilities of your blood and the Nosferatu clan, he doesn't pay you any mind whatsoever, despite how nervous he seems. And you're able to literally, if you want, get to like within arm's reach of him. And as you
Yeah.
do get nearer, you can actually now see, now that you're very close, you can see there appears to be a strange sort of pattern of like black lines, like ink lines, dots and squiggles on this white square sticker that he's peeling off the wall. Now, I'm going to allow, since these aren't particularly commonplace at the moment, I'm going to say that, but you do have a level in technology, I'm going to say that you recognise what's on the sticker. It's a QR code.
Oh, okay.
And this fellow appears like he's literally just about peeled it off, and he's just doing the last little bit. And as you get up and you're like, oh, it's a QR code, he like pulls it off the wall. You see he takes out like a pad, like a writing pad, and he like puts the sticker on a page of the writing pad, sort of folds it over, and he starts like tucking it into his coat pocket.
Obviously, I've got no idea who he is. I don't recognise him in any way.
You don't recognise him. He's like I say, he's a fairly pudgy guy. He's wearing, like I said, this thick sort of winter coat. He's got sort of round glasses on, but other than that, like, you don't recognise him. There's nothing remarkable that stands out about him, other than the fact he looks a bit nervous and excited in equal measures. And he appears to, judging by his body language, which obviously, as a predator, you sort of get used to reading the body language of your prey, so to speak. He seems to be like basically getting ready to like get out of Dodge. Now he's got this sticker.
And he definitely saw me, didn't he?
He's definitely saw you, but
Yeah.
thanks to the sort of mystical veiling you have over you, rather than being like, oh no, I've been rumbled, I best leg it, he's like, oh, there's just some dude like wandering around, I don't need to worry about that. So although he's getting ready to like leave, he's not like, oh my god, that guy's seen me, I best run for it. He's just like, oh, I've got my sticker, I'm going to be on my way.
Yeah, I want to know who this guy is. So my idea is to follow him, but I haven't really got time to tell the others. So yeah, I'm just going to sort of follow him at a distance. So I'll do a classic sort of tying a shoelace, or
Okay, so
similar to sort of slow myself.
that's absolutely fine. You follow him to the edge of the Grand Canal, at which point he hails down one of the many sort of public boats, effectively the water taxis of Venice. He gives the name of a hotel, which you know to be, because you're a local, you know that it's one of the many hotels in San Marco. He gives the name of the hotel, like throws a few euros to the boat guy, hops in the boat, and the boat heads off down the canal towards San Marco.
So I heard the hotel name.
Yep. And you know, obviously, that San Marco is like basically the principal like public square of Venice. It's like tourist destination like numero uno.
Yeah. And I assume I can't follow him the way he's gone, because is it just rivers or canals?
You could walk there, but it would take you like a long time, because you have to like cross numerous bridges and numerous little waterways. Yeah. Whereas obviously he's pretty much taken like the direct route.
Okay. Yeah. I feel that I need to withdraw to tell the others at this point. So I'm going to nip back and tell the others and see if they can think of what it might be, or.
And I'm going to tell you that
Ask the local.
the name of the hotel he gave was Lagoon Apartments.
Lagoon.
Yep.
So
Okay.
was it an individual apartment or? It is.
No, it's called Lagoon Apartments, but it is like a hotel.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a sort of large building that like directly overlooks, like backs onto one of the main waterways.
Okay.
But it's not one of the sort of premium hotels in Venice, but it's not one of the really like nasty ones. But it's the building's seen better days, basically. Okay, so at this point, as that's happening, you walk back into the communal haven where your colleagues, your coterie mates, Aurelio and Sonia have just sort of wrapped up the discussion they were having. You guys see the door open. Franco, sort of veiled in his normal sort of aura of, I suppose you could say, sort of everyday manness, enters. But despite the fact he went out because he was like, oh, I'm hungry, I need to like go and feed. Like when he comes back in, he doesn't look to have like satiated himself. He still looks quite hungry when he comes back in. Not quite as hungry as he did when he went out when he first woke up, but you know, you can still tell he's looking a little bit ragged around the edges. I mean, maybe it's his natural talents for misdirection that are causing him to not look as hungry now, when in fact he is. Who knows? But he definitely, some about the way he's carrying himself tells you that he's not satiated himself.
Slow night, Franco.
What was that?
Slow night.
Wasn't quite as fulfilling as I hoped, and I did. Well, I wouldn't say bump into a bit of trouble, but I saw someone outside our building acting very suspicious. Have you seen these small stickers on the sides of buildings nearby our home recently, like one of those QR codes that people use for looking up information on their
Only in shop
mobiles?
windows, I think.
Well, I saw a man. He looked quite nervous. His disposition, and he was scraping this QR code off the wall very carefully and cautiously, as not to damage it before putting it into a book or a pad of some sort. I followed him a short distance to one of the canalways, and I overheard him say he was going to the Lagoon Apartments. I just wondered what a local like yourself might make of such a event.
Is it a game? The mortals have these computer phone things now, don't they? They play games with them.
Oh yes, I'm sure, but why would he be so nervous?
Maybe he's cheating at the game.
Would you have seen these QR codes before, like I say, on any walls that we could maybe try and find a similar one?
Well, maybe get to that. Where did you say he was going?
Lagoon Apartments.
Well, maybe go there and see if there's one there.
Obviously, as locals, you guys would know that it's not standard practice for there to be like QR codes on the side of Venetian buildings.
Yeah, that's why I said just shops. And even then, very few of them, because it was literally brand new.
Exactly, yeah. And in fact, it's only due to the fact that Franco has like a level of technology skill that you recognised it. Otherwise, he'd have probably been like, "Oh, what's that weird thing?" Because, like you say, they're pretty new at this point in time.
Maybe we should go there then, Franco, and see if there's these QR things.
So if you two head over there, do whatever this is. I will be taking a tour to the archives. I need to look something up. And I'll sort of gather my
Well, don't get any
things.
paper cuts.
Okay.
I
So-
will meet you later then.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of your research, because that'll be we can resolve that with a fairly quick roll.
So
What is it you're trying to research, and where is it
so
you're doing it?
so looking up what specifically, like making a list of things that Andrea was involved in building, personally designed, basically all of that's good stuff that we know where Andrea's design work has been potentially put into the city, and get a map of the city, start putting those things on there, start figuring out like where has Andrea touched the city, and we'll start with that. And if any of these things stand out as specifically significant in any kind of, shall we say, occult way, then of course that will be noted. But that's just to like kickstart the whole thing that I'm going to be researching, which
Okay.
is to say, like going to these places and looking at them more closely.
Okay,
later
so I would say the research part of it will handle with either an intelligence academics role, or if you're looking into it from more of an artistic point of view, you could use intelligence performance of an appropriate type.
I think Aurelio probably doesn't have the artistic merit in mind at all at this point.
Okay.
So, was that intelligence
Academics.
academics?
Yeah.
Intelligence. Well, there we go.
That'll do. Okay, so you begin your research into the architect Andrea Palladio. As I said, Italian Renaissance architect, active in the Venetian Republic, heavily influenced by Greco-Roman architecture, designed churches and palaces. You do find out one interesting just like nugget of biographical information that you find out in addition to about the specific buildings. You find out that he had a fairly unexceptional career until either the year 1538 or 1539. There seems to be a bit of uncertainty about that. When he was 30 years old, and he built a villa for the renowned poet at the time, Gian Giorgio Trissino, and that got him noticed by like several influential people in Venice, who employed him as part of the efforts to like rebuild Venice. You then continue your research into like specific buildings he made, and you find out that although he's renowned throughout Venice as almost like the father of like the rebirth, like modern Venice, like he didn't actually build that many buildings himself personally. He more sort of like laid out the plans for like the overall structure, the architectural plans. However, he did directly get involved with a couple of churches that were built. There's the Church of San Giorgio Maggiore, and a church called the Redentor Church, which is in the Giudecca area of Dussadoro, which is sort of down here. And he was directly involved on them. The Redentor Church particularly was built as partly a memorial, but also a place to house a lot of the bodies of the victims of the plague of 1575, which, like I say, killed 50,000 odd Venetians. And it's one of like as a result, it's one of the largest like churches, not the largest, but one of the biggest churches in Venice. And he sort of wanted like a grand monument to like commemorate the people who died. And you see basically that he's basically, when we're looking forward to Venice's future and we're rebuilding a new city on top of the old, we shouldn't forget what went before. And he seemed like quite sort of taken with that idea that, even though we want to move on from the past, we've still got to like remember it and learn lessons from it. You also know that he built a number of villas on the outskirts of Venice. A little bit of research as well tells you that unfortunately most of those don't survive in the same form now, because obviously as more and more people lived in Venice, its space became more of a premium. So a few of them no longer exist at all. They were demolished. Some of them still exist, but they've been converted to like more modern homes, but they've sort of kept like as much of the architectural facade as they could when they were sort of repurposed. Well, that's what you find out about the architect Palladio. Is there anything else specifically that you were looking into that I've not covered there? Or?
Yeah, primarily like what has Palladio made that we can point out on a map, and then create said map from the info, make note of all this, and
yeah, well, as I say, pretty much the only things he was directly involved in building were the two churches, and a lot of these villas. Most of the surviving ones are currently in the Castello district, because obviously more open areas survived there. They drained the waters to reveal more land there, so there wasn't quite the pressures there were in other areas. But pretty much the whole sort of layout of the city as it is now, he had a hand in. Although he didn't directly build it all, he was basically the person who drew up like the architectural blueprint for the city of Venice as it exists in modern nights.
am I able to access any of the blueprints, the zone planning from back in the day?
Yep, you can see that although there have been some alterations over time, of course, it seems as though back in the day he wanted to build the city so it was sort of the building sort of radiated outwards from the Grand Canal, which, although there wasn't the big tourist trade back then that there is now, it's always been the sort of main artery of trade and the sort of lifeblood, no pun intended, of the city. So he basically started with like the most important buildings like nearer to the Grand Canal, you know, like the sort of the big like civic buildings, your big churches, stuff like that. And then as it sort of radiated out from the Grand Canal, you then started to get like your residential buildings, and it sort of tapered off in at the edges.
If possible, I'd like to get some copies made of just, you know, the sort of zoning ideas
Yeah,
and plans.
it's not a problem. I mean, it's all sort of, none of it's like privileged information. It's just like historical documents, and obviously you wouldn't be able to take the original documents. But but when you're like, oh, can I get like a photocopy of this? Yeah, of course you can. Not a problem.
Yep. So I'll get the. I have my own map that I'm sort of adding on to as I get info, and then I'll get the copies. Start making up this like folio of research into the matter here, and to continue on when all this is done, and we'll jump off no doubt to my compatriots there. But the next stop for Aurelio is going to be, as I refer to, the Redentor Church. So heading there next.
Not a problem. So, like I said, we'll jump over to the others for a few moments. So you guys were heading to the Lagoon Apartments, that's correct, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, not a problem. You head over to San Marco, which like I say is the main tourist area of the city. It's absolutely jam-packed with tourists. As you head through there, you can see that there's a number of, you assume, sort of employees of the city council or some such, and they appear to be like pinning up flyers, posters, etc. And you catch a glimpse of the flyers as you walk past, and they seem to be advertising the fact that from the 4th of February up to the 28th of February, the somewhat resurrected modern version of the ancient carnival tradition is going to be hosted in Venice. And obviously these posters have been designed mainly for tourists, and in fact the sort of tradition of carnival, you know, these masked balls, etc., sort of died out for quite some time. It was like a thing that was around during like the time of the Grand Tour. Then it died out, and it's over the last sort of like 10-15 years it's been slowly resurrected as basically a tourist attraction. You know, people come to get dressed up in like silly costumes, and they all like dance and eat food and drink far too much. And like I say, it's just designed by the council to like bring more money out of tourists basically. But these flyers are going up as you walk around. You get
When
to
is that taking place?
that is taking place in February. Just give me a second, I'll give you the dates. It's the Saturday the 4th of February running through to Tuesday the 28th of February.
What was today's date? Sorry.
Today you're on the 2nd of January.
Oh, 2nd of January. 2nd. Okay.
Okay, but you, unless you particularly want to, you continue on your way.
Is there any of those QR code things on that poster?
Not as far as you can see.
We'll keep an eye out as we're travelling towards this hotel Lagoon Apartments. See if we
Well,
see any others.
I would wager that code has nothing at all to do with government.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was anything to do with the clans. Although I don't think he was a member.
Yeah, you're pretty sure that if he'd had a beast, you know, the sort of the darkness that resides in the heart of all kindred as part of their curse, you, with your abilities, you would have sensed it when you got close to him earlier. I mean, unless he was an almost saintly sort of purveyor of humanity who'd somehow like reached like as near as possible to like sainthood within vampirism, and you don't even know if that's possible. That's a legend talked about by kindred, that, you know, if you can reclaim your humanity, that you can almost sort of deny the effects of the curse. But it's a legend. Like, no one has ever met anyone, as far as you're aware, that's actually reached what they call Golconda, this heightened state where you're no longer vampire, but you're not human. You're almost something better than both. But unless he was at that stage, you'd have probably worked out he was a vampire, and you're like, he's scraping a sticker off a wall in like a dark alleyway. I'm not really getting the sort of saintly like vampire Jesus vibe of him. But yeah, you head to Lagoon Apartments, like I say, back onto the Grand Canal. It's a large, square, sort of red brick building that, as with most of the buildings in Venice, has that sort of foot-high like watermark at the bottom of it. On one side of the building, there's almost like a sort of tower-like structure, which again has like a sort of a red brick build and a sort of tower roof on it. And you can see the front door. It's one of those revolving like, perspex doors that you see in a lot of hotels, and you can see there seems to be a fairly steady stream of slightly more well-off than average tourists sort of making their way in and out. You know, you see people with like suitcases and like pulling like wheeled suitcases behind them, you know, like they've got kids with them, or they're sort of struggling with their stuff and they're like all making their way in or out. As you approach, you don't immediately see any sign of this guy that you saw
I see lots of people. I just wasn't around for the description, so
Yeah.
I'm just staring.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have given him a rough description on the way, but
He's basically like, oh, he was this slightly pudgy guy with like little round glasses, wearing
That
like a
pretty
big,
much describes every American.
well, wearing like a big sort of like winter coat, you know, like carrying a notebook and like a satchel.
I think I will check the sort of. Have they got like a small bar area or something, just in case he's
Yeah, as you head
gone to get a
inside,
drink?
you can indeed see that there's basically the main lobby, and then off to one side there's like a little flight of like 3 stairs heading up, and there is like and it's fairly small because space is limited, but there is like a little sort of open bar area, you know, with a couple of settees, a few seats, a little sort of semicircular bar. There's a young Venetian gentleman stood behind the bar. There's a couple of like women sort of like going around collecting glasses and obviously working behind the bar as well. They're all dressed in like smart waistcoats, trousers. They're also like, as customers go by, you can hear them sort of asking people if they're finished with their glasses. There's a couple of obvious tourists sort of like ordering drinks at the bar, and the barman sort of taking the money and serving them the drinks. You notice that the place seems to be designed mainly, unsurprisingly, to cater to tourists. You can tell that by looking at the booze that's behind the bar. It's not like your sort of local stuff. It's all the stuff that tourists like. You've got your Jack Daniels and your stuff like that.
I'm gonna
Any
get
sign of
behind
him?
Franco and just say, "Give me €300."
Okay, so Franco, you're looking around. You don't see any sign of this guy when your companion sort of slides up behind you and says in your ear, like, oh, give us €300.
Yeah, I mean that's no problem. I can
That's chump change to you.
sort that out.
Yeah, so Franco just sort of like reaches in his wallet, takes out a wad of like notes and like passes them back to you.
I'm gonna totter over to the concierge desk.
Yeah, not a problem. You walk over. There's a slightly older gentleman there who's again decked out in what appears to be sort of like grey waistcoat, dark trousers, and sort of like red tie, which appears to be like the uniform of this hotel. And as you approach, he says, "Oh, can I help you at all, madam?"
Yes, I'm looking for a gentleman. He just dropped €300 outside the front of the hotel. I thought I'd return it to him.
So you can you're literally like waving like the wedge.
Yeah, that's it. There you go.
Drop €300. You see like his eyes widen as you like literally like wave this wad of cash up under his nose, and he says, can you tell me the gentleman's name, or at least describe him?
I can describe him for you. I'll give the description of the gentleman.
Okay, not a problem. So I'm going to ask, you can, I would say probably manipulation, because you're trying to get something out of him. Manipulation, I'd probably say etiquette or subterfuge would both be applicable. I will also give you an additional 2 dice bonus, because you're basically like, oh, you want some of this cash, son.
So it's subterfuge. What did you say? Manipulation.
Yeah, he's trying to get him to do something.
And +2.
Oh, it's a messy
critical.
Okay, so again, as with previous, what we did with Franco, you have succeeded. So obviously you've not killed this guy, because your aim was to get him to give you the details on this dude. But something of the predator or the beast in you has caused something which might cause complications in the future. I'm going to see how good my memory is and if I can remember where it is. Page 206, there we go. Lovely. So again, and obviously we'll get used to this as we go on more in the game, but just to make sure we're doing it right, I'm going to look it up now. You could gain one or more stains, and basically the way stains work is if you've got any, I believe it's at the end of the session, you have to make a roll based on the amount of stains you've got, and if you fail on that roll, it can knock your humanity down. That's how humanity works in this game. Perhaps you breach the masquerade. You could lose a dot of an advantage. I don't really see how that's applicable. Or we could just be like, yeah, it's turned into a failure.
I'll take some stains, John.
Okay, lovely. I was hoping you were going to say that, because I'm interested to see how this works. Let's see. Stains. Humanity, and the way it describes this, I'm not going to read from the book very often, but just while we're getting used to it. Humanity only shifts in response to actions with major story significance. Embracing a new child, damage to a touchstone, stuff like that. The more usual corruptions and deformations of the character's humanity can cause stains on their humanity track. If too many build up without repentance or redress, a character's humanity might drop. And the way you track stains is where your humanity is. So what we should do is we shouldn't really have those ones filled in. So what you do is when you get, say you got like a level 1 stain, you start filling in from the left hand side. Oh, this has gone a bit weird. Can you remember how you fill this in on this sheet, Johannes?
Which bit?
The how you fill in the humanity on here, because I'm trying to fill it in from the right hand side, and it's
right. So how did I pull this up? So the way that I've set it up on mine is we've got so I've got 7, so I've filled 7 from the left in red, and I think because we only have empty dash and red, I think we might have to finagle this a little bit by hand somewhere else.
Yeah.
But for now, what I would do is I would put a dash at the end of your humanity, like your actual rating. I would put a dash there for each stain.
I see what you're saying. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Yep. So blah 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 blah. And I'm gonna look up, because I believe there's a chart you can roll on for what type of stain you get. So I'm going to see if I can find that, because I can't remember where it is.
I believe it's just stains, and then
is it just literally you don't get a specific one? You just get
I think, just speculating here, you might be recalling compulsions, which is
yes, you're right. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
okay.
And I looked this up earlier tonight because I was like, are we going to get into this? So I think stains are just stains, and they're all the same category, and you deal with those. I do also recall that was the end of the session.
Okay, yep. So what I've done, Dave, if you look at your character sheet, I've basically put a slash mark on one of your humanity boxes.
Yeah.
So you've got a level 1 stain, and the way this works is if you have any stains on your humanity track at the end of the session, you make a remorse test, which is you roll a number of dice equal to the unmarked, unfilled dots on your humanity track. So for you, it'd be 2 dice. You always get to roll 1 dice, even if it's full. If the remorse roll results in at least 1 success, you feel a bit of guilt and shame. You get rid of your stains and you retain your humanity. If it results in no successes, the beast has won and you lose 1 point of humanity, but you get rid of all the stains.
Nice.
Okay, so I'm going to say that perhaps with the stain, maybe you look a bit over eager, or maybe subconsciously this guy picks up on something of the aura of the predator about you. So rather than being sort of, I really want some of this money, maybe I'll get a big tip out of this. Now he's more sort of like, he's still going to give you the information, but now he's more sort of a bit nervous, like, this woman's giving me like the crazy eyes, like I want to give her this information so she'll like get away from me as quickly as you can, but you still get the information. Okay.
That works for the persona, so that's fine.
Okay, lovely jubbly. So he, now sort of stammering a bit nervously, he says, Yes, madam. The gentleman you're after is a Mr. Totino. He's staying in room 55.
Thank you. I'll stalk off.
Yeah, no problem. You sort of sashay off, and as you do, you hear like a slight sort of faint like sigh of relief from the concierge as you sort of disappear off, and you vaguely sort of just on the edge of your perception hear a couple of his colleagues like, "Oh, what's wrong with you? Like you broke out in a cold sweat," and he's like, "Oh, I don't know what it was. It's just something about that woman." And then he seems to like shake it off a little bit, and he's like, "Anyway, we haven't got time for this. We've got work to be doing." And he's like, "Oh, get on with your work." And sort of sends everyone back to work. But you've got the information.
Okay. I'll go and find Franco, who's probably still trying to wangle some information out of the bar.
So while all that's been going on, Franco, what have you been doing at the bar?
No, I was just surveying, seeing if he's got himself a coffee or a drink of some description.
Okay. Now this
researching.
is, as far as I'm aware, this is basically just pure luck. Like, does he happen to be in the bar? So what I'm going to suggest is you just roll a single D10. It's a 50-50 chance he might be in the bar. If you get an odd number, he's not. An even number, he is in the bar. Okay, so he is not in the bar.
Okay. But I'll be just sort of, from a distance. So it'll take me a little while because I'll be keeping my distance. I'll be just sort of looking about while Sonia's sort of getting some more useful information.
Okay, absolutely fine. So you reconvene after a short time, Sonia and yourself, like just by the stairs that lead up to the little sort of raised bit where the bar is. Obviously, you've got your information, Sonia. Franco's been scoping out the bar, but there's been no sign of this Mr.
I shall
Totino.
tell Franco the room number, his name. I shall also inform that I used the 300 euros to bribe the concierge,
Okay.
even though I've kept it.
So what do we do with this information?
Well, you're the one that's concerned about these QR code things.
Oh yes, I'm intrigued what it is.
So I'll leave it to you. I'll just stand here, look pretty, and if anybody tries to hurt you, I shall rip out their heart. How's that sound?
Intriguing. So I'm gonna go and find this room.
Okay, so you get the elevator up to the next floor. You count along the room numbers until you get to room 55. It's pretty much your standard, sort of swipe card room entry system. All the rooms have numbers on them. You're stood outside the fairly plain sort of white painted door of room 55, and as you listen with your vampiric senses, you think you can hear like someone like typing on like maybe a computer keyboard or something similar, like just further in the room, like behind this closed door.
And what sort of time is it?
Let's see, with you doing that and the research and then travelling, we're probably on about 10 o'clock now.
I mean, he's not gonna just give up the information, so just thinking what's the best way. Oh, Franco's a little bit nervy after the incident earlier. that he hasn't told anyone about yet, obviously, of giving up his identity and also using his abilities when he feels the hunger is already starting to creep up on him once again. He's wondering if it might be better to wait till this guy's potentially asleep and try and sneak in and look around in private rather than try and confront him.
It's certainly a possibility.
Could just eat him.
Well, if it is something that's interesting, it might, it might be useful to question him. Although I am somewhat still hungry.
2 birds, 1 stone. But all he's done is steal a sticker.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. I don't think he's guilty of anything.
Other than stealing a sticker.
Yeah.
Right, I'll tell you what, while you guys are thinking about that, why don't we jump back over to Aurelio for a short period. What's Aurelio up to at the moment? Like I say, it's about sort of 10:15 in the evening by now.
Now, I'm not expecting you to have the sort of opening hours of every church in Venice, but
No, oddly enough, I don't.
yeah.
However,
yeah,
it is
we never get the prep we want, John.
No, we never do. However, like I say, a lot of Venice revolves around tourism, and even like the churches need to keep that money coming in for repairs, and there is like a very strong sort of like a vein
It's
of
Catholic as well, isn't it?
Yeah, Catholicism.
Yep.
They are
so
open 24/7.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
pretty much every church in Venice is like open 24/7.
Yeah, I would have gone to the Redemptor Church, and if there's any staff about, I would try and get them to the side, and as we sort of cut in, maybe I'm in the process of trying to convince them to like, if the places where they sort of, the way that I understood it was that they interred some folks here who had perished in the plague tragedy. I would want to go and look at the look at those places, look at those remains, the tombs, the crypt, or whatever form it takes.
Yeah, that is absolutely fine. Obviously, because the Redemptor Church is in Giudecca, which is sort of down there, you would need to charter a boat or some form of transport to get yourself across. I don't see
I would actually, on good of you to mention that, because I didn't think about that, and I have a touchstone, so I go and look for my my touchstone friend here.
Are you talking about Francesca Savina, the tour guide? Or you mean Alfonso, the poor boatman?
Yeah, the poor boatman, the poorest of boatmen, who is indeed my go-to when I want to go somewhere. And my sort of modus operandi with him is, and we will maybe play this out, whatever you decide, but it's like I'm trying to like use his services for free, as usual, in exchange for such as my company is, and also religious insight and blessings for the evening and hopes for his mortal soul.
Okay, so it takes you a short while, but you do indeed eventually track down Alfonso, and he manages to make a living scraping by ferrying tourists out, maybe doing a little bit of fishing, but he's just got like a shabby old sort of like boat that he owns that's like a manually sort of poled boat. It's not one of the new fancy ones. It doesn't look fancy enough to be one of like the major tourist draw sort of gondolas, but he just about manages to scrape by, you know, because he can only really charge sort of pittance for taking tourists about. But you do eventually find him as he's just dropped off at what appears to be like a couple of like backpackers, probably students, you know, and they lacking the financial means to hire one of the more resplendent methods of transport. They've gone for poor old Alfonso's like little shitty gondola that he's got, and he's just dropped them off. He doesn't seem to have spotted you yet, as he's counting out the few like euros they've given him.
Yeah, and I'll, as I approach, I will raise up my hand and wave at him to eventually, hopefully, attract his attention.
Eventually, after he's finished counting his takings and he's put them away in his pocket, he does indeed look up and he sees you now. How would Alfonso know you? Would he just know he was Aurelio, or?
Yeah, Aurelio, like father Aurelio, because he's only ever seen me with the cassock
As a
on,
priest,
so.
yeah. So as he sees you, he says, "Oh, Father, it's good to see you. Tell me how are you faring?" And then, as is often his way, he gets a little bit lost in his own reverie. He says, "I swear every day it gets harder and harder just to make enough money to feed yourself a crust in this city."
I find myself attending to some studious matters this evening, but Alfonso, it is, and like just clearly, Aurelio is actually good point. Maybe Aurelio, such as I am myself, realized it a little bit too late. Probably need to try and at least look like not a corpse. So here goes. Yeah, I summon the blush of life before
I think
get
as
into
you
the
sort of
boat.
wave at him, you sort of realise just as you're getting a bit closer, you're like, oh yeah, the whole like thrice dead corpse thing isn't really going to wash. So you will the blood to create a facsimile of life, a sort of a blush of health, if you will. The poor boatman Alfonso doesn't seem to have picked up on the fact that you've like only just sort of gone, oh yeah, shit, I best do that.
I admonish myself mentally for once again just completely forgetting that.
Luckily for you, because we're in the sort of winter months and it's quite cold,
Yeah.
you think that like any sort of paleness as you walk across it would probably have sort of gone, oh yeah, it's because of the winter weather, and you know you're out there just in like your cassock and whatever, you're not wearing like big winter clothes, so you're like, I think I've got away with it. And he's like, say no more, Father, say no more. I'm a good devout soul. I won't stand to see you stranded here if it's within the power of these poor old bones of mine to see you safely to your desert. Please get in. And as you get in, you see like the boat sort of sways a little bit dangerously. It probably lets in like a tiny little bit of water. It's not in great nick. Rather like his clothes, there's a few holes and it's a bit shabby.
I like to imagine that there's a so you know, like a plastic canister for some kind of liquid, whatever it might be. I think he has one of those because there's a handle on one of those. I like to think that he's got one of those and he's caught it. I know exactly the type of thing that I'm trying to desperately describe because I've seen them myself and used them myself in real life. He's caught it in such a way that you can use it as a scoop to get the water out the bottom of the gondola and toss it outside.
I think he, like you say, he probably does have like this improvised scoop, and part of the reason he only charges like a pittance is, as you know from previously having used his services, that like if you're a passenger in like Alfonso's shabby little boat, he's like, well, I'm doing all the steering and whatever. You need to be there bailing out whatever little bits of water comes in.
So before I get into doing my part of the work,
He's like, oh, let me help you in, Father. Let me help you in. And he's sort of like,
Yeah, I'll let him ease me into the boat, and so, as before I go and sit down, I reach into a pocket, and as is often my way, like I purposefully never bring him actual money to pay him with, but I try and do something. Sometimes it's like, oh, I don't know, here's a cup of coffee or something, and this time I press into his palm a couple of stubs, like, you know, ticket stub type things, and say there is a new cafeteria type American that has opened up in the harbor that away. I motion towards
like,
the land.
he basically sort of makes that like noise, and he's like, oh, more tourist places, more foreigners coming in with their mess, and not wanting to give money to good, honest, hard-working folks. And he takes a little flask out, and he's like,
Yep. And I say,
would you care for a sip, Father? And he holds it out, and you can basically tell there's like a very cheap whiskey in this little flask.
I do the same thing I did previously.
Yeah, just pretend to like, drink.
I take it and I stopper it with my tongue.
Yeah. Even if you noticed you weren't drinking it, you probably wouldn't take offense, but like, you're a priest.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I probably rely a lot on that, like the social capital of having a cassock, so people don't question you as much anyway, or give you a little bit of leeway because of that. Anyway, so I explained to him, like, those two, I am told, are you can redeem for one each. You can redeem a meal. The place is, please do go look for it. It is called the Subway, and I believe these will net you a meal of bread. It will not be focaccia, but it will be something.
He says, Subway. What kind of ridiculous name's that for a cafe?
I have.
It is.
Yes, it is. It is their way, and much as the good Lord tests the Americans with difficulties of naming their cafes, it also he also tests us with the cruelties of never getting the monetary compensation we should have, and an unrelenting schedule that sends you in matters of study into the dark night, my friend. Let us be on our way. Let us not tarry.
He says, well, and he starts sort of like poling the boat out, tucks the cafe stubs away, and he starts sort of slowly poling the boat out. And as he's steering the boat out across the bay towards Giudecca, he says, he's making a bit of chit chat. Obviously, he knows you. He's like having a bit of banter as you head across. He says, "Oh, well, to be fair, you're lucky you caught me, Father. After all, I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to be able to keep up the old boating, I'm afraid." And he carries on sort of poling the boat.
It takes a second for Aurelia to do the math. Is medical troubles?
He says, "Well, it's not me. It's my daughter, Cara. You remember Cara? Yes, I'm afraid last winter she caught a severe chill, and well, medical bills being what they are, and well, now her mother's no longer with us, and with me barely making enough money to feed us. I mean, I can't afford to pay someone to take care of her. I mean, and he sort of he looks, for saying he's just holding up some, like, in one hand, these like cruddy like tickets you've given him.
Mm-hmm.
He's like
Subway.
Yeah,
like
he like holds it, he looks for a moment. It's almost touching. He looks like incredibly grateful for saying he's holding up these like just Subway vouchers, and he's like, although these will help, it's been I've been trying to make sure that she doesn't go hungry, even if it means I don't eat myself. But as I say, it's getting harder and harder to make a crust these days, especially when I have to pay for the medication for Cara. But these will help. Thank you, Father. Bless you. And he took some away and he carries on. He always seems like lost in his sort of like thoughts as he silently poles
I
towards
think
Giudecca.
unless he speaks up again, I think the rest of the journey until we reach Giudecca is going to be just silence and the lapping of water.
Indeed, and that's how most of the journey passes. The next time he speaks is just as you're sort of getting to the shore of Giudecca, and now it appears to be in modern lights, it's a quiet residential area, largely look to be sort of like working class housing, a few sort of slightly newer, slightly more sort of like chic, for want of a better term, apartments. It looks as though once upon a time, again, it probably had like the fishing industry here. There's lots of long docks that sort of jut out over the water, and in fact you pole into one of those, and that's when your boatman begins to speak again, and he's sort of like, almost so he's half talking to himself, he looks around and he says yes, this is well, but back in my father's days, of course, all of this used to be shipyards and factories, he says, as he's sort of like helping you out of the boat. He says, hey, my father used to say, God rest him, he used to say that they even, I think back just before the Second World War, they even used to have a film studio in Giudecca. But well, it's all fancy houses and luxury apartments and such like now.
Yes, I suppose. Well, I suppose.
Anyway, I'm sorry, Father. I'm keeping you from your business, and I need to get back to Cara.
Alfonso, where can I find you tomorrow evening?
He says, "Well, I expect I'll be at home. You know where that is. I don't really get out much now, obviously, but yes, I'll probably be there.
If you would permit, I would very much like to visit you and your daughter. I presume she resides with you.
Oh, of course.
I would like to. Well, I presume your daughter has not had the chance to go to mass.
No, she's been
take
too ill.
communion. I would. If you would permit me, I would like to bring communion to her, and perhaps.
He looks absolutely thrilled at that prospect. He's like, "You're too kind, Father. We'd be honoured to have you in our humble home." I mean, granted, as you know, we live in one of the poorer parts of San Paulo, but and we have little to offer in the way of hospitality. But what we do have, we'll freely share with you, Father. We'd be honoured.
It is no trouble. After all, we do know that it is not riches that makes a man rich in this life. I shall meet you tomorrow night then.
Again, bless you, Father, bless you. And he nods and he sort of he clasps your hand in almost like a pity manner, and he sort of like kisses your hand, and then he says again, I bless you, Father, and he gets back in his boat, and with like a final wave, you hear like the gentle swish as he like paddles back towards the mainland of Venice, for want of a better term.
Yeah, and I go on to locate the church.
Indeed, not a problem. So you start making your way through the district of Giudecca as I've described it, and you eventually make your way to what officially is known as the Chiesa del Santimoso Redento, but most people just call it Il Redento. It's a 16th century Roman Catholic church. It's, as you know from your researching from the architect, it's been sort of built in like a Greco-Roman style. There's a lot of Doric columns and sort of fluted sort of roofs and stuff like that. It has a large dome set at the back of it, and as I say, it was built as something of a votive church, you know, as both a reminder to honour the people who died in the plague, and also as thanks that God had basically delivered them from the plague and Venice had survived. As you head towards it, there's like a little plaque outside that tells you that the church was built by one of those little like sort of heritage plaques where it sort of tells you that it was built by the architect, like directly supervised and overseen by the architect Andrea Palladio, as commissioned by the Senate of the Republic of Venice. As you head towards it, you vaguely recall again another little nugget of information you found in your research, that in the original plans the Senate wanted the church to be like very sort of plain and like square, but Palladio sort of adapted the plans so it ended up with a single nave church with like 3 chapels on either side of it and this big dome. You also see on the heritage plaque that the cornerstone of the building was laid by the then Patriarch of Venice, Giovanni Trevisano, in 1577, and it was consecrated in 1592. It's built out of white, has like a white stone facade, and as you head onto the inside, it's large, but it's a fairly simply laid out building. It's this large square sort of central church, then it has this nave at the back and these 3 smaller chapels sort of off to either side. As you head in, it becomes obvious, and there's tourists about, etc., as you would expect. As you head in, it becomes obvious that there's not like 50,000 odd people like buried in this church, but you do start seeing sort of small statues and like memorials to the people who died. And as you head further in, there is another plaque which says that originally some of the people who died, like when they first built it, that some of the bodies were housed here, but they've been long ago sort of repatriated onto San Michele, where most people are buried. There's like a special section of the graveyard there for the plague victims, but they kept the memorials like here just as a way of like honouring the people, even if they couldn't keep all the bodies here.
Yeah. And as I browse this memorial, I will close my eyes.
Okay.
And upon opening them, it's almost like a smudgy mirror now, Aurelio's eyes that sort of reflect everything around him. And Aurelio is calling upon the power in the blood to look for any possible fetters that might exist here. Okay. In the specifically looking at the memorial bit, but of course, you're everything stands out. So if there's stuff elsewhere, maybe he'll notice that. But he's interested specifically in the memorial bit.
Of course, yeah. So I know this is a reflexive thing. It doesn't cost you anything, effectively. Mm-hmm. You look around as you attune your vision to the emanations of the dead and departed. And as you do, for a moment, it almost sort of causes you to stagger and like fall to the ground, as literally like all of these like memorials are just like fell out radiating like spiritual energy. It's a bit like me as someone who suffers from epilepsy, like sticking their face against like a strobe light and then going, I wonder what happens, click, and then be like, oh! Literally, as you turn it on and all this energy sort of leaps into vibrancy that you can see, it literally causes you to like stagger a couple of paces, and you quickly recover yourself. A couple of sort of tourists come over and they're like, oh, are you all right? Do you speak English?
I reply in Italian. It's like, no,
Okay,
no,
so
I do not.
so you don't speak English, so they come over to you and they're obviously concerned. You can tell from their tone,
Yeah.
but you have no idea what they're saying. They sort of come over to you and they're trying to sort of help you, and they look concerned, and you can tell from their tone they're concerned, but you don't know what they're saying. You reply in Italian. They obviously don't know what you're saying. As is the English way, they sort of repeat what they said originally, like in a louder voice,
Louder.
slower.
Yeah.
Yeah, which doesn't unsurprisingly makes no difference to your comprehension or lack of comprehension of them.
Yeah.
Eventually, though, sort of you hold your hand up and sort of seeing that
Yeah.
like you don't appear to be about to drop down dead or anything like that. They say a few more things which don't mean anything to you but sound a bit calmer, and then eventually they sort of drift away once they've satisfied themselves that you're not going to drop dead.
What is the memorial, like material wise? What are we looking at? Are there any pieces of it? Aurelia is looking to take a fetter with him.
Okay.
Anything to grab, to break off quickly.
Okay.
Anything like that.
There's a number of different memorials, and they all, by and large, seem to take the form of sort of fairly small. I mean, that sort of size, but they're like they're statues of like human figures, and obviously there's not 50,000 of them, but it seems as you look around that each of these sort of small carved figures is like an individual, and they're obviously representative of like the jobs that people did and like what people used to wear in the day. So it's like they've tried to like symbolically capture like the essence of the people who've died. And then as you sort of follow, they line both the walls at the back of the church. As you follow these statues through, the final sort of larger statue, which is like human sized, is what appears to be the picture of a biblical angel, wings out the back of it, halo the lot, sort of holding its arms out as though like to embrace these small like crowd of people who are like filing towards it effectively. And like I say, literally like spiritual essence is like radiating from like all of these statues. Like it's like Feta Central in here.
Are any of the statues small enough that I could slip one under my clothes to transport it away?
And this is a bit of a flippant remark, but like, you think like a garden gnome, they're that sort of size. So I would say if you can make like a stealth roll or something, like a subterfuge roll, yeah, you could probably get out. I mean, it'd be a little bit unwieldy because, like I say, they're not exactly tiny, but you could potentially do it, but you would need a roll for it because obviously a lot of people are sort of, because there's tourists in and out all day as well. Obviously, the people who sort of maintain the church and like the priest, they're obviously on the lookout for like tourists trying to rob stuff.
Right. So, yeah, I'll give it a go. I won't. So what I'll try to do is get it sort of in like under the arm a little bit, not like under the cassock, because my second like my fallback plan is that a priest here is going to catch me in the act, and then I will try and lie to him. So I need to be able to show like, oh yeah, it's here, not like, oh, I put it in my backpack. Okay, so we'll do so trying to stealthily steal one of these. What are we looking at roll wise?
I would say either subterfuge or stealth probably apply here. I would say you could probably then either use wits or dexterity, depending on whether you're trying to use more misdirection or whether you're just trying to grab it quickly and hustle your way out.
I think misdirection is the thing here. And I guess like subterfuge would be the thing that I try if I get caught, I guess. So maybe wits and stealth.
Yep, that's absolutely fine.
Okay. Stealth and then wits. So let's try and actually do a thing here. So I would like to call upon the plot once more, John. I would
Okay.
like to
And if you
surge the
wouldn't
blood.
mind, for the benefit of
Yeah.
Darren and Dave and anyone who's watching, would you like to explain how that works?
Yeah, I'll actually call it up now in the book here. So there's a thing you can do as a vampire that is called blood surge, and that means you do your rouse, as is the case with a lot of these vampiric abilities that you pay for. You do your rouse roll, and then you can you can add one attribute die to a dice pool. This is for all of us because I think we all are on blood potency 1, I believe. So that gets better if your blood is more potent. We don't have more potent blood, so we get an extra. You can put on an extra die. So in my case here, what I would do is I do this and become more hungry, which is wonderful. So I make my rouse roll. I fail that. I gain an extra hunger, but now I can count my wits as one higher than it was before. So I get an extra die on my thing that I'm trying to do here.
Yeah, and that's an innate ability that all vampires have.
Yeah, every vampire can do that. Okay, so stealth, wits, and I'm going to try. I'll put 1 for modifier. I think that's probably how it works.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Okay, yep, so 3 successes. You've got a little statue. You tuck it under your coat. You hustle out with it. No one's spotted you. You've made your way out to the door of the church. When, as you're heading out, you see a man dressed in the manner of a priest, rather similar to yourself, although a good deal less pale, and you recognise one of the members of the Artisti del Destino coterie, and he's just stood there looking up at the church, and as you sort of walk past, he says almost to himself, he's like, magnificent, isn't it?
Such is the glory of God.
Very true, very true. And such a place of life, but also death. It's ironic, really, but also strangely appropriate.
There's nothing ironic about any of this. It is the one and the same. There is only one thing, and it is existence.
He smiles and nods and says, but as you say, all things change. My brethren should know that more than anybody. But please, don't let me keep you, Father.
Do you have a particular... do you experience a particular draw to the Lord's words, or do you... are you more of a architect?
I'm myself and my brethren, we have a long interest in religion, particularly Catholicism, but there seems to be something unique about both the number of churches and the coexistence of the ancient history and the modern life of Venice within the city. That I find quite appealing.
Yes. It is, after all, only by the hand of man that any of this stands here.
That is true.
Well then. May God be with you.
And with you,
Exit stage left.
not a problem. Okay, at which point we're going to jump back to the hotel where we have Franco and our slightly worrying Sonia. You know where room 55 is. You know this guy's in there. You've heard the typing of, well, you assume it's him. You've heard the typing of keys behind the door. It's getting on a little bit now. What's the plan?
Well, unless Sonia's got a better plan, I was thinking of the classic fire alarm situation. Get him out of his room.
Nice.
See if
All
he.
my plans as a mobster are usually knock on the door, knock about. I don't think you want to use that route, Franco. So
Yeah, and I think, Franco, you've probably known Sonia for long enough now that, like, it's pretty obvious that she's from one of the, like, old school sort of, like, mafioso, like, style families, just due to, like, how she, like, tends to respond to, like, stuff and situations. That she's obviously not had what many would consider to be a normal upbringing.
Well, I mean, if that's your way of doing it, you want to take charge, then this guy, as you said, may be guilty of nothing other than stealing a sticker off a wall.
so I just need to get this straight. I want him unconscious, but not harmed.
I just want to find out what he's got in that notebook, what he's up to, what this QR code is that's of such value. Have I got a mobile phone?
Yeah, you've got a monitor on a mobile phone.
Yeah, so I could, see what this QR code is if I get access to it.
Okay. You just stand over there then.
Okay, I shall stand over the other side of the corridor from the door.
Okay.
I shall knock gently on the door, John.
Okay, you knock gently on the door, and a few moments later, with this sort of slightly irritated sounding voice, say, "Who's there?"
I saw you take a picture off a wall.
At which point, like, the door opens a crack. You can see it's like got one of those like little chain like latches, and you see this slightly pudgy but a little exhausted looking guy. He's got like the specs on like the top of his head. He looks out through the door and he goes, "Who sent you?" And he's just like peeking out through the crack.
I shall lever the door, John.
Yeah, and we're just going to do this as like a one roll deal because it's not like a massive combat.
Yeah.
I presume your point, you want to force the door and knock him out.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, yeah, so it's a strength brawl roll. You're not going to need that many successes because he's just a pudgy like guy.
So strength.
Brawl. Yeah, 2 successes. So you, exerting just the merest whisper of your vampiric strength, you push the door in. You hear the chain like ping off the latch as this guy sort of like starts staggering backwards. You have a brief moment to take in. There seems to be like 4 or 5 like laptops in here, and there's like reams of printer paper and notebooks and stuff like that on like a table. And then you presumably like beam this guy around the head and like knock him out.
I'm just going to jaw him, yeah.
Yep, you smack him in the jaw. He's obviously not used to this sort of stuff, and he barely utters a sound as he just like slides to the floor. Just like his head goes, like, snaps to one side, and he just goes down.
So I'll tie him up and stick a towel in his mouth.
Yeah, absolutely fine. So obviously,
then,
sort of looking through the doorway.
Yeah.
Frank,
Pop my head round.
you
Come
see
in.
this going on?
Yeah, I shall step into the room and shut the door behind me.
Yeah, no
Quick
problem.
look up and down the corridor.
You don't
Start looking for cameras.
Roll me a d10, Dave. You see there's like one camera in the corridor. Looks to be like quite an old make. You're pretty sure it only covers the corridor. Now, since you pushed the door in and then went into the room, at most it's going to have you pushing the door and then stepping inside.
Yeah.
So
That's
you
fine.
think you're good?
Yes, let's start searching the room. See if we can find this notepad he had or
Okay.
notebook or...
You, like I said, there's a number of notepads. There's about 4 or 5 laptops. They like the screens are locked on all of them, and like passwords on them. There's also like an old style like dot matrix style like printer, like a portable one, and there's a ream of paper next to it. The paper appears to be just full of like lines and lines and lines of like letters and numbers, seemingly like just in a random pattern. Like I said, there's a few notebooks. You lift them up, you flick through them, and as you're doing that, most of it's a little bit bewildering. It looks as though, due to all like the scribblings and the crossings out, like this guy was trying to like decode something or like decipher something, and he's obviously been using these computers to do it. And while the computers have been like running their thing, he's been like scribbling down like a few ideas. And eventually, as you continue looking through all these like little notebooks that he's got, you do find the one that he took out of his coat earlier, and it has the QR code in it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll scan it with my phone.
Okay, yep, you scan it with your phone, and as this application you've got on your phone decodes it, you see a picture of what looks to be a butterfly, but the butterfly shape itself is made up out of seemingly like random numbers and letters.
Similar to all these scribblings in his book or printouts.
Yeah.
Is it quite a short, like, section of numbers, and like it'd be a couple of sentences if you sort of manage to turn them into letters?
Yeah, there's probably about 50 numbers and letters in all in this like little drawing.
Okay, so it's we can't get onto the laptops at the moment.
The screens are locked and has like the sort of enter password screen on it.
Yeah.
Obviously, you could try and make a technology roll to see if you could like brute force your way in, but with 1 dot in technology, even if you succeed, it'll probably take you like a fair old amount of time, because you'll literally just be having to like try password after password to try and get in.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably better to take them away if we're going to try that. See if I can make some contact with someone that might be able to hack into it in some way. Yeah, flicking through the notebooks. Anything else, or just more of these random sort of lettering? Does it look like at any point is like where he's deciphered any of the words, anything legible?
Okay, most of the sort of more recent stuff is as I've described. However, you can see that he's obviously like filling up the notebooks from the front. So you start working your way back through them, sort of and handily he's basically like numbered them. So it's like, oh, notebook 1, notebook 2. So you're like working your way back to his earlier stuff. And when you get to his earlier notebook, you see that in there is basically a piece of writing where he says, "Oh, I've managed to crack the latest puzzle. It says that it's in Venice, and then there's like a GPS coordinate, and that I should look for the next puzzle there." And you have a quick check on your phone of like the GPS coordinate, and it is the building where you found him.
Right. But there's no sort of indication of this is like some treasure hunt for money or...
No, in fact, it seems almost that perhaps he was worried about people finding his notebooks. He seems to have like deliberately omitted anything that would tell anyone what they're looking at. I mean, it takes you a fair while, even with the notebooks, to like work out that like, oh yeah, he's saying here that like something's led him to this building where I found him. So he seems to have like deliberately been obtuse with his notes.
And has he got a passport or something that sort of shows where he's come from, or?
Okay, you search through. You don't find a passport. However, you do find an identity card. He is an Italian national called Carlino Totino. You see, like, he's got like a little picture of him on his ID card, and he's wearing like a smart suit and a tie. You know, so like standard like office wear. He's got his hair like slicked across.
And it's not like a company badge or something. Like
No, it's just basically like a
works
sort of national like, identity card.
ID thing. Okay. It hasn't given us all the information we're looking for, obviously.
And as you're thinking that, you hear like a sort of dull like,
I'll knock him out again.
you hear him like, and then he goes quiet again.
I'm also going to take his glasses off and put a case over his head.
Absolutely fine.
I think I'll collect up these laptops and the notebooks.
I'm going to ask at this point, Johannes, can you roll me a single D10? This is basically just to see whether anyone comes by, anything but a 1 or a 2. Yep, absolutely grand. So, yeah, no one stopped by, no room service, no nothing like that.
So collect up the laptops
Yep, not a problem.
and the notebooks.
Put them in a pillowcase.
Yeah, put them in whatever. Oh, he's got. Did he have a rucksack?
Yeah, he did. He had a satchel.
Yeah, put as much as I can in there.
Okay, no problem.
I mean, since you've gone to the effort of knocking him out, I mean, it'd be rude not to have a little drink while we're here.
I'll hurry up.
As some of us are still thirsty. So I'll just go for the real quick 1 dot.
Yeah, not a problem. That takes a few turns, and it knocks off one of your hunger dots. You just take a little nip from him. He's already knocked out. He doesn't even stir.
Okay.
Obviously, you lick the wound. It closes up.
I shall ensure that he's knocked out. Remove the bonds.
He is knocked out. Yeah, no problem. You untie him.
Leave the pillowcase on his head.
Okay.
And I'm going to scroll in the messiest writing I possibly can on a piece of paper, "We're watching," and that should scare him off.
Okay.
Just before we go, I just wonder if he's got anything else hidden. Have I been able to just check through his clothing, like for any other sort of notebooks, writings, anything?
Yeah, make me a wits investigation roll.
Or his wallet or anything, some sort of way of working out his passcode. Wits investigation. Let's go
Oh, that's a bad miss. Okay. So, and we'll go on to how bestial failures work now. So, a failed roll, not enough successes to reach the difficulty or beat an opposing roll, in which one or more hunger dice. How many? No, well, it's not going to actually be a bestial failure because you've got 5 successes. So, basically, if 5 successes wasn't enough, this would be a bestial failure, hence the possible. But 5 successes is more than enough because you've got plenty of time. There's no threats, so it's not a bestial failure. So you don't have to worry about that. You start searching this guy. At first, you don't find anything. Then, as you're sort of rifling through this like thick sort of like duffel coat, like winter coat he's wearing, you suddenly feel like there's a small sort of rectangular object that appears to be like inside the lining of the coat.
Yeah, I'll sort of try and work that out then. How to get that out or rip it out if necessary.
Okay, yeah, you look round and it looks as though what he's done is on one of, like, he's done it quite well, like you barely notice it, but on one of the seams of the lining, he's basically carefully like cut down the seam, slid something in, and then he's stitched it back up again. He's done quite a good job of it.
Okay, let's see if I can take that out. Have a very quick look before pocketing it.
Okay, you take it out, and it appears to be again another small notebook, and inside, in a slightly rambling fashion, he has recorded the fact that he's basically a member of some sort of like online group of like techie people, basically. All of the people he references simply like online pseudonyms. There's no like, actual name on there. And as you sort of read through all these notes, it seems that he's part of a group of people who came across a fiendish puzzle that had been placed online by an organisation, an agency, an individual, they're not sure, called LEP 5000. And it was a fiendishly difficult puzzle, and this LEP 5000, whoever she is, said they were looking for uniquely intelligent individuals who were capable of solving this puzzle. And it seems from this that lots of different people online are trying to solve it, and this guy's like part of like a group of people who've all pooled their resources to try and solve this puzzle. And you see that they appear to have solved a series of one, and each puzzle they solve leads to like the next puzzle. And the most recent one they solved led to them finding the GPS coordinates to the building near your communal haven, which led him to the QR code, which he obviously was like, oh, I'll scrape this off, I'll take it with me, I'll decode it later. Obviously he scanned it, he saw the picture of the butterfly made of letters and numbers like yourself, and he's basically been online on his laptops trying to decode it with these other people.
Doesn't mention if there's some sort of prize or what the end result is.
It just seems as, because there's like a copy of like the original sort of poster. He's like scrolled down the original post said, and it just claimed to be this from this agency LEP 5000, and it basically said, oh, we're looking for uniquely intelligent individuals of the highest caliber who are capable of solving these puzzles. And they posted it anonymously online, and a number of people have been trying to like solve these incredibly like baroque and difficult puzzles.
Okay. Well.
Obviously, as you sort of turn around, you see that Sonia's just finished scrawling her like "We're watching you" notice.
I mean, I've checked all the obvious places. I mean, I've looked under the bed in case he's put something under there, or under pillows and stuff, just I just have a last sort of ramshack of the room sort of thing, yeah, turning things over and just checking for stuff in case it's
Okay.
tried to hide something.
You search around, and under one of the pillows, you find what appears to be a book. It appears to be a basically an Italian language version of the book Moby Dick.
Okay. Take that as well.
And you see that it's obviously been read like a number of times, it's like well thumbed.
Yeah. That's something to do. Okay. Yep. Take that as well. So if I'm now satisfied that I've sort of checked out as much as I can of this
Yeah.
room, and then yeah, I suggest we leave.
I shall warn him about the camera in the hallway. So to keep your head down and
Yeah. Is it facing towards the stairs
it's
we're
not
going
pointed
down, or?
down the hallway, so you will come across it. So you can keep
Okay.
your
Yeah.
head
Well,
down.
I'll do my best to shield my features from such a camera
Yep, not a problem.
as we leave.
So you leave your sort
Everything
of
up.
vaguely threatening note, Sonia.
Yeah.
You leave this guy like knocked out but untied with pillowcase over his head. You've taken
Yeah.
all of his laptops, notebooks, stuff like that, the book, etc. And you guys start making your way out. Now, I am going to ask one of you guys, you don't both have to make the roll. I'm going to ask one of you to make me either a dex stealth or a wit subterfuge roll. And this is obviously just because you're basically carrying like pillowcases full of like laptops, and you're just trying to which isn't a common sight to see like strolling through the halls of the hotel and out the door, to be perfectly honest. And unless you get like an absolute failure, you'll manage to get out, because there's a lot of tourists coming and going. There's a lot
Well,
of people.
Franco's the one with all the laptops, so he can make the roll.
Okay. Well, I'll use my silence of death once again, just because that's what he does whenever he's trying to be stealthy. So stealth dex. Okay.
Yep, absolutely fine. It takes you a little while because obviously you're trying to avoid bringing attention to yourselves, but you make it out the front of the hotel with your ill-gotten gains.
Head back to headquarters. If we haven't got
Okay.
anything else.
So you guys start making your way back to the communal haven in Castello. Now, Aurelio, is there anything else you want to do before returning to the haven, or?
So the only cemetery is in San Michel.
Yeah. Obviously, due to originally they did used to bury people on the mainland, so to speak, but due to the lack of land and like public health concerns, eventually they relocated it. So all burials now take place on San Michel.
Right. Well, what's the time when I'm leaving Judeca?
We're probably on about 11:30 now.
Yeah, plenty of time. I would be heading back to my own place.
Okay, that's absolutely fine.
And so just referring to it here. Yeah, I've got a one. Did I put in the? No, I didn't write the details in there. But my idea was that with a one dot haven, it's going to be like quite literally just a shop for like a mortician's business.
Okay.
Basically a small workshop for a mortician with enough room in there for me to have my own sort of daytime cubbyhole in there.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
And yeah, I'll head there in order to enact a couple of ceremonies.
Okay.
Right, so of course this is something that we should probably talk about here, John. So my ceremonies are affected by how strong the shroud is where I'm doing the thing. And I have a chart for it. And the one thing that we would need to determine now is how strong is the shroud in my haven area, like the mortician shop. So the categories are
Yeah, I'm looking at them in a
thick.
minute.
Yeah, so on my sheet as well here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where you are, but I put them there as well. So we've got thick, thin, frayed, absent, and they come with like a specific effect each. And there's a possible cause for the state of the shroud that is listed in the chart there as well. Obviously, I can induce changes to this by
Yep.
a deliberate murder for one, but
Yep. So, how often would you say have like deaths occurred in your haven?
probably not at all.
Okay.
On the flip side of it, I think this is my I really need to do this thing, i.e. ceremony behind closed doors so that I know no one's going to turn up.
Okay.
So no deaths, but I've probably done ceremonies here once or twice.
Okay. So since it's only once or twice, I'll probably say that the shroud is probably like fairly thick here at the moment.
Right. All right. So we'll go in and well, I've got the fetter, which I will place on basically the slab that is the working space for my mortician stuff. And I lay out the paraphernalia. So out come the and Franco, I think, because Franco is kind of bought into a lot of the let's say aesthetic things about vampirism. There's probably things here that Franco would get a kick out of. So out come the black candles. There's the a copper bowl. There's fresh herbs. There's a silver dagger. All the accoutrement of the black arts of necromancy.
Okay.
And I enact the ritual summon spirit using the fetter that I stole from the church as the ingredient for it.
Okay. So,
And yeah,
so that's the ingredients. One of the targeted wraith's fetters, a photo or the visual depiction of the wraith or their sign name. Yeah, you've got the photo. Yeah, fine.
So along the course of, I believe it's an hour, so the whole thing takes an hour. At one point, Aurelio cuts a hand and bleeds into the copper bowl. We'll make a roll here. I'm not sure what all this does, but I'm gonna click it now. Oh, there we go. Okay, so the rouse is successful.
Yep.
And that's good. Okay, speed reading all of this. So I bleed on the memorial statue as well. I pour it from the copper bowl onto it. But why didn't it do the thing here? Because I thought I set it up as being able to roll. Oh, that's because it's here. Okay, yeah, it's in a different place. Because there's the rouse roll, which was that, and then this is my. Oh no, not strength, not strength. Too quick. So Oblivion.
I was going to say,
and
Oblivion plus
Resolve.
strength, you're going to like the Arnold Schwarzenegger school of like necromancy. Wraith, get in here now, I've got your fetter.
Attend me, ghost.
I pour my vitae on your fetter. Get to my ritual circle.
Hear my call.
Yeah.
Right. So it's actually a resolve. So this should now it's going to pick hopefully Oblivion and Wits now. Resolve. Sorry. There we go.
Okay.
Yep. And then let's see something here. Right. So, my interpretation of that is it is successful. I've got several successes going on there, and what that means is I call up this wraith, which is entirely up to you, John, how long it takes for it to manifest, and I have no way of influencing that at all. So that is entirely like, is that guy busy? Because if he's like a wraith, like taxi driver, and he's on the other side of the underworld here, like my spell doesn't make him turn up. He's going to have to come now, but it will take normal time for him to travel because he needs to. He lives his ghost life.
So you enact the ceremony. You know from practice that it has worked. The call has gone out.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like they don't just like ping into existence. But how long do you wait to see whether the spirit turns up this night?
I'll wait the rest of the night.
Okay. Okay. So an hour later, appropriate enough, just as we're getting to midnight, you notice that the temperature in your small personal haven drops by several degrees, and the light like coming through the window, the shadows that dance upon the walls seem to deepen slightly as the essence of oblivion suffuses itself into the more mundane darkness that once dwelled there, and the shadows seem to become almost more solid, although they are still shadows. And after a few moments you hear a sort of whispered voice that seems to be almost struggling to make itself heard, that seems to emanate from the shadows on the wall, that says, "Who calls us? Who calls?"
I have a bunch of stuff to attend to with this guy, so if we're sort of aiming to cut somewhere around here, maybe we'll deal with the whole, because I have a whole different ceremony to do as well.
So
as a follow-up.
I think what we'll do is we have the other group returns to the communal haven with their ill-gotten gains that they've gathered. Like I say, it's getting pretty late, so you all retire for the evening, and we finish up. Well, you've gathered back at your communal haven. Obviously, you've got time to discuss it. And what we'll do next session is we'll sort of finish off the end of this evening. So what you guys want to do with all these laptops, you've got Sonia and Franco, and what you want to do, any more rolls you want to make with that. And we'll also round off what Aurelio is doing with this spectral presence he's managed to conjure from the Shadowlands. So we will wrap there for this evening, guys. Thank you very much for playing. Hope you all had fun. I very much enjoyed running it for you. Obviously, we'll work out XP and whatnot, but I'm going to end the stream now, so it just remains me to say thanks to my wonderful players and for anyone who's watching this. Thanks to Rob Benford for jumping in the chat earlier on. Very much appreciated. And hopefully we'll catch you all for the next one in a couple of weeks. Take it easy.